The annual Alpha Summit was the most prestigious event of the decade. My mate, Alpha Cassius, had spent months preparing for it. He wanted a seat at the high table, and he was willing to do anything to get it, including erasing me. "Wear this," he had sneered, tossing a plain, scratchy maid's uniform at my feet. "And keep your mouth shut. If anyone asks, you're not my Luna. You're just a stray I took in out of pity. I can't have a weak, wolfless mate ruining my reputation tonight." I put on the dress. I swallowed my pride. I stood in the shadows of the grand ballroom, holding a heavy tray of champagne, watching my own husband laugh and flirt with the daughter of the Southern Alpha. When the heavy golden doors to the royal balcony opened, the room went dead silent. King Valerius, the most feared ruler in history, stepped forward to the microphone. Cassius straightened his tie, eager to impress. "My lords," the king's voice boomed, "you are here to witness history. Tonight I am not just hosting a summit, I am announcing the return of my blood." Cassius smirked, whispering to the woman beside him, "Watch this. I bet I will get a promotion." "I have spent 20 years looking for her," the king continued, his eyes scanning the crowd with intensity. "My lost child, the true heir to the Moonlight Throne." The king's gaze stopped, right on me. Cassius laughed nervously, grabbing my arm and digging his nails into my skin. "Don't look at the king, you stupid girl. Look down." He turned to the alpha next to him. "Apologies, she's just the help, a clumsy maid." But the king didn't look away. He didn't speak. He descended the marble stairs, the crowd parting like the sea before him. He walked straight past the powerful alphas, straight past Cassius, and stopped in front of me. Cassius opened his mouth to apologize for my presence. "She is a servant, Your Majesty. I will remove." The king ignored him. To the horror of the entire room, the most powerful wolf in the world dropped to one knee, lowering his head before me. "Welcome home," the king whispered, his voice trembling. "My daughter." What happens when the worthless slave becomes the most powerful wolf in the kingdom? When the mate who called you slave realizes he just humiliated royalty in front of the entire supernatural world. Cassius is about to learn that some mistakes can't be undone. Don't forget to like and hit the subscribe button for more amazing stories like this. Now let's get straight into it. I woke to silk against my skin, and my first thought was that I'd stolen something. 6 years with Cassius had trained me well. Anything soft, anything beautiful, anything that brought comfort was not meant for me. I belonged on scratchy wool in the servant quarters, not wrapped in fabric that felt like moonlight. My eyes snapped open. The ceiling above me was painted with constellations in gold leaf, a crystal chandelier catching the early morning sun and scattering light like diamonds across cream-colored walls. This wasn't the pack house. This wasn't anywhere I recognized. Panic clawed up my throat. "Easy, child." The voice was deep, gentle, impossibly calm. "You're safe." I turned my head so fast pain shot through my neck. King Valerius sat in a simple wooden chair beside the bed, looking nothing like the terrifying figure who descended those marble stairs last night. He wore plain clothes, a linen shirt, dark trousers, and his silver hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it. His storm-gray eyes watched me with an expression I couldn't name. "Where am I?" My voice came out hoarse, broken. "The royal suite, the East Wing." He poured water from a crystal pitcher, offering it with steady hands. "This is your room if you'll have it." I stared at the glass like it might turn to poison. In Cassius's house, I'd needed permission to drink. Taking things without asking meant punishment. A night in the basement, meals withheld, his cold silence that made me feel like I was disappearing. "You don't need to ask," the king said quietly, reading my hesitation with unnerving accuracy. "Not for water, not for food, not for anything ever again." My hands shook as I took the glass. The water was cold and clean, with a hint of lemon that made my throat ache. When was the last time I'd tasted something this pure? I couldn't remember. "Do you know what happened last night?" he asked carefully, setting the pitcher down. Fragments came back in jagged pieces. The summit. The maid's uniform that scratched against my shoulders. Cassius's fingers digging into my arm, his voice hissing warnings about keeping quiet, staying invisible, not embarrassing him. The champagne tray growing heavier with each humiliating hour. And then, "You called me." I couldn't finish. The words felt too absurd to speak aloud. "My daughter, yes." He leaned forward slightly, then seemed to catch himself and settled back, giving me space. "I know this is impossible to believe. I know you're frightened, but I need to show you something." He stood slowly, every movement deliberate and unthreatening, and walked to a large painting I hadn't noticed. It was covered with white cloth, positioned on the wall directly across from the bed, where I'd see it first thing every morning. If I stayed, if this was real, if any of this made sense. "This is your mother," he said, and pulled the cloth away. The air left my lungs. The woman in the portrait stood in a garden of moonflowers, wearing a sapphire gown that matched her eyes the exact shade of the ones I saw every time I caught my reflection. Her hair fell in auburn waves over her shoulders, the same color that Cassius had once called common and unremarkable. She had my nose, my cheekbones, my small hands clasped in front of her. But where I always looked afraid, she looked radiant, loved, like she knew exactly who she was and made no apologies for it. Her name was Lycan. The king's voice cracked on the name, and I realized he was barely holding himself together. "She was my fated mate, my wife, my queen, and your mother." "No," the word escaped before I could stop it. I shook my head, pressing back against the headboard. "No, that's not, I can't be." "You were stolen when you were 3 years old," he continued, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. "Someone took you from this castle, from me, from her. Your mother died trying to protect you, and I've spent 20 years searching. 20 years following every lead, chasing every rumor, refusing to believe you were truly gone." "I'm nobody," I whispered, and the words tasted like truth because Cassius had fed them to me so many times they'd become scripture. "I'm defective. I'm wolfless. You are not defective." The king's voice held such absolute certainty it almost hurt to hear. "You were bound, Maya. Someone suppressed your wolf with dark magic, made you appear weak when you're anything but." I looked at the portrait again, at the woman who couldn't possibly be my mother, because that would mean I was supposed to be someone important, someone worthy, and I'd spent 6 years learning exactly how worthless I was. "If this were true, I'd remember," I said desperately, searching for any crack in his story. "I'd remember living here, being a princess, having a mother who looked at me like that." I gestured at the portrait, at the love radiating from the painted woman's smile. "You were 3, and the healers believed the same spell that bound your wolf also suppressed your memories." He moved closer, stopping at the foot of the bed. "You don't remember anything before age 5, do you?" My breath caught. He was right. My earliest memory was waking in a cold orphanage with a matron who looked at me with pity, telling me I'd been found on their doorstep. Abandoned, unwanted, a blank slate with no past and no future. The door opened, and I flinched hard, my body remembering what sudden sounds meant in Cassius's house. 3 women entered wearing elegant silver and white uniforms, carrying what looked like breakfast and a gown so beautiful it made my chest hurt. "Your Majesty," the eldest woman said with a deep curtsy to the king, then turned to me with warm eyes. "Princess, we've brought." "I'm not a princess," I interrupted, my voice rising toward panic. "This is a mistake. I need to go back. Cassius will be angry that I fainted, that I caused a scene. I need to." "You're not going back to him." The king's voice was gentle but immovable as stone. "Ever." "He's my mate," I said automatically, the words programmed by years of repetition. "He's a man who treated you like property." The king knelt beside the bed, bringing himself to my eye level. "The mate bond doesn't override your right to choose, Maya. It doesn't give him ownership of you. It never did." The eldest woman, Vera, I remembered from her name tag, stepped forward with the gown. "Princess, if you'd allow us to help you dress." "No." I scrambled backward, away from the beautiful fabric, away from the title I didn't deserve, away from all of it. "I can't. I don't belong in something like that. I'll ruin it. I always ruin things. Cassius says I'm clumsy and stupid and..." My back hit the headboard. Trapped. The walls were closing in. I couldn't breathe. The room was too bright, too big, too full of people looking at me like I mattered when I knew I was nothing. This was a trick. A test. Cassius had put them up to this to see if I'd betray him, to see if I'd get ideas above my station, and when I failed, he'd lock me in the basement for a month. Everyone out. The king's voice cut through my spiral. Now give us the room. Vera and the other women retreated immediately, taking the gown with them. The door clicked shut, and suddenly it was just the king and me and the too loud sound of my ragged breathing. Maya, he stayed kneeling, hands visible and empty. Look at me, can you look at me? I dragged my eyes to his face, expecting anger or disappointment or disgust. Instead, I found only compassion. You're having a panic attack, he said calmly. I need you to breathe with me, in through your nose, he demonstrated, slow and deliberate. Out through your mouth. I tried to copy him, but my lungs wouldn't cooperate. That's all right, try again. In, he breathed in. Out, he breathed out. This time I managed to follow, and then again, and again, until the crushing pressure on my chest eased enough for me to think. I'm sorry, I whispered automatically. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. No apologies, he interrupted gently. Not for having feelings, not for being afraid, not for anything. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand why you're being kind when I'm nobody, when I can't even shift, when I... Come with me, he stood, offering his hand. I want to show you something. I stared at his outstretched palm like it was a foreign object. When was the last time someone had offered me a hand instead of a fist? I couldn't remember. Slowly, terrified it would be snatched away, I placed my trembling fingers in his. His hand closed around mine, warm, steady, safe. He helped me out of bed and led me to a tall mirror I hadn't noticed, framed in gold and positioned near the window where morning light poured through. Look, he said quietly. I forced myself to look at my reflection. I saw what I always saw, mousy brown hair tangled from sleep, too thin frame from years of eating last and least, eyes that apologized for existing. The borrowed nightgown hung off my shoulders. I looked exactly like what I was, a servant playing dress-up in a world that didn't want her. What do you see? The king asked. Someone who doesn't belong here, I whispered. I see my daughter. His voice was thick with emotion. I see a young woman who survived 6 years of systematic cruelty without losing her capacity for hope. I see strength that most trained warriors don't possess. I see your mother's eyes and spirit. I see someone extraordinary who's been told she's ordinary for so long she believes the lie. It's not a lie, I protested weakly. I can't shift. I can't fight. I can barely speak without asking permission first. What kind of princess? Those are adaptations, he interrupted. Survival skills you developed because you had to. They don't define you, Maya. They're just proof of how strong you are. I shook my head, unable to accept his words, but he continued anyway. The healers examined you while you were unconscious. They found dark magic woven through your very essence, a suppression spell designed to bind your wolf and hide your royal scent. His jaw tightened. Someone has been draining your power for years, using it to sustain themselves. You're not wolfless, child. You've been caged. The words should have felt like liberation. Instead, they felt like another impossible truth I couldn't grasp. I know this is overwhelming, he said, turning me gently away from the mirror to face him. I know every instinct tells you to run, to hide, to make yourself small, but you're safe here. You have choices now, real choices. You can stay or go. You can accept this truth or take time to process it. You can heal at your own pace. But please, his voice broke slightly, please give me the chance to prove that you matter, that you're wanted, that you're loved. The last word shattered something inside me. I'd spent so long being told I was tolerated out of pity that the concept of being actually loved felt like a fantasy. What if you're wrong? I asked in a small voice. What if I'm not her? What if? You have a birthmark, he said quietly, on your left shoulder blade, shaped like a crescent moon. My breath caught. I did have that mark. Cassius had mocked it once, called it ugly, said it proved I was damaged from birth. Your mother had the same mark, the king continued. As did her mother before her, going back generations. It's carried only by female heirs of the Moonlight bloodline. He walked to a desk and retrieved a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a moonstone charm that seemed to glow with inner light. This was your mother's. She had it made for you when you were born. She'd put it on your tiny wrist and tell you stories about the moon goddess. A sad smile crossed his face. You'd laugh and try to eat it. Something flickered in the back of my mind. Not quite a memory, but an echo. Warmth, laughter, safety. I won't force you to believe overnight, he said, holding out the bracelet. But I can promise I'll spend every day proving this truth. You are Maya Thornwood. You are my daughter. You are home. My hand shook as I reached for the bracelet. The moment my fingers touched the moonstone, warmth spread through me. Gentle, familiar, right. Like coming home, after being lost in the cold for far too long. I looked up at the king, at my father, and saw tears streaming down his weathered face. Will you stay? He asked. Just for today, just to see. If you want to leave after that, I'll arrange it. No judgment, no questions, but please give me today. I looked at the bracelet in my hand, then at the portrait of the woman with my eyes, then at the mirror showing a girl who still didn't recognize herself. This was impossible. This was terrifying. This changed everything. But maybe, just maybe, it could be true. Okay, I whispered. One day. His smile was pure joy. Thank you. He helped me fasten the bracelet around my wrist, and as the clasp clicked into place, I felt something shift inside me. Not quite my wolf, not yet, but an awareness. A presence I'd never known was missing. I lifted my eyes to the mirror again. The same girl stared back, but the silver bracelet caught the light. And for just a moment, wearing my mother's gift, I looked almost like I belonged. The crystal decanter shattered against the wall of Cassius's sweet, expensive whiskey, bleeding down the imported wallpaper like amber blood. 3 days. It had been 3 days since the summit, and his entire world was collapsing. Alpha, the southern delegation, has withdrawn their offer. His beta, Marcus, reported from the doorway, wisely staying out of throwing range. Alpha Dimitri sent a formal letter rescinding his daughter's hand. He said, and I quote, "My family will not align with a man foolish enough to hide a princess in his servant quarters." Cassius's hands curled into fists. The Southern Alliance had been crucial, their territory, their resources, their military strength. He'd spent months courting Dimitri's favor, enduring the man's insufferable daughter and her vapid conversation, all for a marriage that would elevate his pack from mid-tier to genuine power. And Maya, pathetic, wolfless, worthless Maya, had destroyed it all in 30 seconds. The Pack Council is demanding an emergency session, Marcus continued, consulting his tablet. Half of them are calling for your removal as Alpha. They're saying you've brought shame to. Get out. Alpha, I really think you should. I said get out. Cassius's voice dropped to the alpha tone that compelled obedience. Marcus's eyes glazed slightly as the command took hold, and he retreated without another word. Cassius stalked to the window overlooking his territory. Below, pack members moved through the courtyard, but he could see the way they clustered in small groups, whispering, judging, questioning his leadership. All because of her. His phone buzzed. Another message from his mother, the 5th one this morning. He'd been ignoring them, but this one was different. Just 4 words that made ice crawl down his spine. Control her or lose everything. He stared at the message, his mother's face sharp in his mind. Alara had always been demanding, always pushing him to be stronger, better, more ruthless. She'd been the one to tell him about Maya in the first place, suggesting he take the orphan girl as a mate despite her apparent wolflessness. She'll make you powerful in ways you can't yet understand, his mother had said. Trust me. That trust had cost him everything. Unless he could fix this, unless he could get Maya back under his control and salvage what remained of his reputation. The mate bond still existed. He could feel it, that faint golden thread connecting them despite the distance. It pulled at him constantly, an ache he'd learned to ignore over the years. But now it might be his only advantage. Maya had always been so desperate for his approval, so eager to please. 6 years of careful conditioning didn't disappear overnight, even if a king claimed her as a daughter. She'd come crawling back. She always did. He just needed to see her, to remind her of who she really was beneath whatever fantasy the king was selling. Cassius pulled out his phone and composed a message to the palace. Request formal audience with Princess Maya regarding our mate bond and personal matters requiring immediate resolution. The response came within an hour. Request denied. Princess Maya is not accepting visitors. His jaw clenched. Fine. If they wouldn't grant him an audience, he'd demand one. He arrived at the palace gates with Marcus and 4 guards, all in formal delegation attire. The royal guards stationed at the entrance didn't even pretend to be welcoming. Alpha Cassius, the lead guard said with barely concealed contempt, you don't have clearance to enter. I'm here to see my mate on urgent pack business. Princess Maya is not your mate. The bond has not been acknowledged or formalized. You have no claim here. The bond exists whether it's acknowledged or not. I have rights. You have nothing. A new voice cut through the argument. A scarred warrior in commander's insignia approached, his expression carved from stone. You're trespassing on royal property. Leave or be removed. Cassius bristled at the dismissal, the casual disrespect. He was an alpha. He commanded respect. I demand to see King Valerius. I have formal complaints to file regarding the treatment of my... Your what? The commander stepped closer, and Cassius caught the scent of a powerful wolf barely leashed. Your servant, your dirty little secret, your punching bag. I never laid a hand on her, Cassius snapped. No, you just starved her, isolated her, locked her in basements, and spent 6 years convincing her she was worthless. The commander's smile was all teeth. We know everything, Alpha, every single thing. The princess has healers examining her now, documenting every trauma you inflicted, so I'd choose your next words very carefully. Cassius forced his expression into something diplomatic. I'm here to clear up misunderstandings. Maya, the princess, she's confused. This has all been very sudden for her. She needs familiar faces, people she trusts. People who abused her. I protected her. The words burst out before he could stop them. I gave her shelter when no one else would. I made her my mate despite her deficiencies. You treated a princess like garbage and are now shocked there are consequences. The commander made a gesture, and 24 guards materialized from seemingly nowhere, all armed, all focused on Cassius. You have 10 seconds to leave palace grounds. After that, you'll be arrested for trespassing and held for trial regarding your treatment of Princess Maya. This is insane. I'm an alpha, you can't just... 10, 9, 8. Cassius's wolf snarled in his chest, wanting to fight, to dominate, to show these arrogant palace guards who they were dealing with. But he wasn't stupid. He was outnumbered, outmatched, and on their territory. He'd have to try a different approach. Fine, he said coldly, but you tell Princess Maya that I'll be filing a formal complaint with the High Council. She's still my mate, and this is kidnapping. 7, 6. Cassius turned and stalked back to his car, his guards following. He didn't look back, but he felt every eye on him, felt the weight of their judgment and contempt. The drive back to his territory was silent, Marcus wisely keeping his mouth shut. But when they arrived at the pack house, another of his mother's messages was waiting. The king will kill you if you push too hard. Be smarter. Make her come to you. Cassius stared at the words. His mother was right. She was always right. Direct confrontation wouldn't work. But guilt, obligation, the mate bond that Maya had always treated like sacred law. Those were weapons he knew how to wield. He composed a message, making sure to route it through official channels so the king's people couldn't block it. Maya, I know you're confused and overwhelmed. I understand the king has filled your head with stories about being his daughter, but you know the truth. You know who you really are, my mate, the woman I've protected and cared for these past 6 years. Whatever he's promising you, it's not real. I am. We are. Please let me see you. Let me explain everything. You owe me that much after everything I've done for you. See. He sent it and waited. An hour later, a response came. Not from Maya, but from the palace. Princess Maya will grant you one audience tomorrow at noon in the presence of King Valerius and witnesses. Any attempts at manipulation, coercion, or emotional abuse will result in your immediate arrest. Come alone. Cassius allowed himself a small smile. She'd agreed to see him. That meant some part of her still felt obligated, still felt the pull of their bond, still remembered that she belonged to him. One conversation. That's all he needed. One conversation to remind her of her place, to make her doubt whatever fantasy the king was selling, to plant seeds of guilt and obligation that would fester until she came back on her own. He knew Maya, knew every insecurity, every trigger, every weakness. He'd spent 6 years creating them. The king might have claimed her as a daughter, but Cassius had shaped her into what she was. And he wasn't about to lose his greatest investment without a fight. The next day, Cassius was escorted through the palace by stern-faced guards who treated him like a criminal. The opulence was overwhelming. Marble floors, gold fixtures, artwork worth more than his entire Pax treasury. This was where Maya had been living for the past 3 days, surrounded by luxury she'd never known. It would make bringing her back to reality so much easier. They led him to a formal receiving room. King Valerius sat in a high-backed chair that wasn't quite a throne but radiated authority nonetheless. Flanking him were guards and officials, all watching Cassius with open hostility. And there, standing beside the king's chair, was Maya. Cassius barely recognized her. Gone was the timid girl in servant's rags, hair always tangled, shoulders perpetually hunched. This Maya wore a gown of soft blue silk that made her eyes luminous. Her auburn hair was styled elegantly, woven with silver threads. She stood straight, shoulders back, looking almost regal. But her hands were clasped tight in front of her, knuckles white. And when her eyes met his, he saw the flash of fear before she quickly looked away. There, that was the Maya he knew, still afraid, still controllable. Alpha Cassius, King Valerius said coldly, you have 5 minutes, speak. Cassius ignored the king and focused on Maya, letting hurt and confusion fill his expression. Maya, baby, what's going on? Why won't you see me? Talk to me. She flinched at the endearment. Good. I'm not your baby, she said quietly, but her voice shook. You're my mate. You've been my mate for 6 years. We took vows. Vows you never honored, the king interrupted. You never marked her, never claimed her publicly, never gave her the Luna title. By your own actions, you rejected the bond. I was protecting her. Cassius let anger leak into his voice. She's wolfless. Do you know what the pack would have done if I'd made her Luna? They would have torn her apart. I kept her safe, kept her hidden from those who would hurt her. You kept her in a basement, one of the officials said flatly. You starved her, isolated her, convinced her she was worthless. I gave her everything I could. She had shelter, food, a place in my home. As a servant, Maya whispered, and everyone turned to her. She was trembling but met Cassius's eyes. You made me sleep in the servant quarters, eat after everyone else, wear rags while your pack wore fine clothes. You told me I should be grateful you didn't throw me out. Because I was trying to teach you strength. Cassius took a step toward her, and immediately 3 guards moved between them. I was trying to make you earn respect, to prove you were worthy despite your disability. She has no disability, the king said, voice like ice. She has a wolf that was suppressed by dark magic. You kept an enchanted princess as your slave. I didn't know, the words came out desperate. How could I have known? She came from an orphanage, she had no wolf, I thought. You thought you could break a young woman down until she believed she was nothing, and no one would question it. The king stood, and power radiated from him like heat from a forge. You thought wrong. Cassius turned back to Maya, switching tactics. Maya, please, remember what we had. Remember the good times. I know I wasn't perfect, but I cared for you. I still do. This mate bond, it's real. You feel it too, don't you? He pushed feeling through the bond deliberately, letting longing and need flow toward her. Maya gasped, hand flying to her chest. Stop it. See, you feel it, that connection between us. That's not fake, Maya, that's real. More real than some claim of royal blood from a man you met 3 days ago. That man is my father, she said, but uncertainty crept into her voice. Is he? Do you remember being a princess? Do you have any memories of this supposed kidnapping? Cassius pressed forward ruthlessly. Or are you just taking his word because he's powerful and you're desperate to belong somewhere? That's enough. The king's voice cracked like thunder. Maya, you don't have to listen to this. Yes, she does, Cassius said. Because I'm the one who's been here for 6 years. I'm the one who took her in when no one else would. I'm the one she made vows to. Vows made under duress, an official interjected. She was 17, alone and terrified. You took advantage of a vulnerable girl. I gave her a home. You gave her a cage. Maya's voice was stronger now, though tears streamed down her face. You made me believe I was broken, that no one else would ever want me, that I should be grateful for scraps of your attention. Because you needed to understand reality. Cassius let his own emotion show, the frustration of 6 years dealing with her weakness, her constant need for reassurance. You were never going to be a real Luna. I was trying to help you accept that. The slap of words hit harder than any physical blow. Maya recoiled as if struck. And Cassius knew immediately he'd miscalculated. Guards, the king said quietly, remove him. Wait, Cassius started, but hands gripped his arms. You have revealed yourself perfectly, the king continued, voice trembling with rage. In your own words, you've confessed to systematic abuse, to deliberately breaking my daughter's spirit, to treating her as less than a person. I want mercy, Maya whispered suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at her. What? The king asked gently. Please don't execute him, don't hurt him, just make him leave. Maya wouldn't look at Cassius, but her voice carried the same pleading tone she'd used 1,000 times before. Please. Even now, she was protecting him. Even now, after everything, she couldn't bear to see him hurt. Cassius felt a surge of triumph. She was still his, still conditioned to put his welfare above her own. As you wish, the king said, though his expression promised violence. Alpha Cassius, you are banished from palace grounds. If you attempt to contact Princess Maya again, if you spread lies about her legitimacy, if you so much as speak her name in public, I will have you arrested and tried for treason. Do you understand? Cassius met Maya's eyes one last time. This isn't over, he said softly, making it sound like a promise instead of a threat. You'll realize the truth eventually, and when you do, I'll be waiting. The guards dragged him from the room. As he was escorted back through the palace, his mind raced. Direct manipulation wouldn't work. The king's protections were too strong. But Maya's guilt, her ingrained instinct to please, her desperate need to avoid conflict, those were weaknesses that couldn't be guarded against. He couldn't control her anymore. But he could destroy her credibility, plant doubt about her royal blood, make allies question whether the king was being manipulated by an opportunistic imposter. If Cassius couldn't have her, he'd make sure no one else could either. His mother's words echoed, control her or lose everything. Fine. If he couldn't control Maya, he'd control the narrative instead. And by the time he was done, the entire supernatural world would question whether the lost princess was real, or just a wolfless nobody with delusions of grandeur. The pain started 3 hours after Cassius left. I was in the library with my father. I was trying to get used to calling him that, though the word still felt foreign on my tongue, when fire suddenly lanced through my chest. The book I'd been holding slipped from my fingers, pages fluttering as it hit the floor. Maya, my father was beside me instantly, hand hovering near my shoulder but not touching. He'd learned quickly that unexpected contact made me flinch. What's wrong? I don't. Another wave of pain crashed through me, this time radiating down my spine like someone was driving hot needles into each vertebra. I doubled over, gasping. Get the healers, my father barked at the guard stationed by the door. Now. The pain intensified, spreading through my limbs, my bones, my very essence. It felt like something was trying to claw its way out from inside me, desperate and furious and wild. I collapsed to my knees on the plush carpet, distantly aware of my father kneeling beside me, talking in soothing tones that I couldn't process over the roaring in my ears. Then suddenly, impossibly, I heard another voice, not out loud, inside my head. "Let me out." The voice was feminine, feral, and absolutely livid. It crashed against my consciousness like waves against rocks, demanding, commanding, pleading for freedom. "There's something," I managed to choke out. "Someone inside." "Your wolf," my father said, understanding immediately. "She's fighting the spell. Healers!" He roared as 3 figures in white robes rushed into the library. Healer Moira, who I'd met briefly yesterday, took one look at me and her expression shifted to alarm. "The binding is destabilizing. We need to get her to the healing chambers immediately." I barely registered being lifted, carried through corridors that blurred together in a haze of agony. The voice inside me, my wolf, was howling now, a sound of pure rage that only I could hear. 20 years in chains, 20 years in darkness. Release me. "I don't know how," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I don't know how to help you." The healing chambers were flooded with natural light, filled with the scent of herbs and something else, magic, I realized. The air itself felt charged, alive. They laid me on a bed, surrounded by crystals that pulsed with soft light. Moira's hands began to glow as she held them over my chest, and 2 other healers took positions at my head and feet. "The spell is fracturing," the male healer, Scholar Aldrich, someone murmured, said, his spectacles glinting as he studied something I couldn't see. "The princess's wolf is too strong. She's breaking through the binding by sheer force of will. If she breaks through too fast, the magical backlash could kill them both," the younger healer warned. "Then we guide the breakthrough," Moira said firmly. "Maya, can you hear me?" I managed a nod, though even that small movement sent fresh waves of pain cascading through me. "I need you to focus inward. Find your wolf, talk to her. Tell her we're trying to help, but she needs to slow down or she'll hurt you both." "Hello," I thought desperately, directing the word toward the presence raging inside me. "Please, I want to help. I want you free. But they say we have to be careful." They caged me. The fury in her voice was matched only by the anguish. "I felt you suffer. Felt every moment of your pain, your fear, your loneliness. And I could do nothing. Couldn't protect you. Couldn't fight for you. Couldn't even make them see you were mine to guard." The depth of her torment crashed over me like a physical blow. She'd been aware this whole time. Conscious but imprisoned, forced to witness 6 years of abuse without being able to defend us. "I'm so sorry," I whispered aloud. I didn't know you were there." "Not your fault," she responded, and beneath the rage I heard something else. Grief. "Never your fault. But I'm done being silent. Done being caged. I'm coming out." "Maya, she's pushing too hard," Moira said urgently. "You need to calm her down." But it was too late. My wolf slammed against the binding with all her considerable will, and something inside me cracked. The world went white. When I could see again, I wasn't in the healing chambers anymore. I was small, so small, running through a garden filled with flowers I didn't recognize. Moonflowers, some distant part of my mind supplied. The moon's favorite bloom. A woman's laughter rang out behind me. Warm and bright as sunshine. "I'm going to catch you, little moon." I squealed with delight, my tiny legs pumping as I raced down stone paths lined with silver roses. But I wasn't running from fear. I was running from joy, knowing that being caught meant being swept into loving arms and tickled until I couldn't breathe from giggling. A large silver wolf bounded into view, playful and gentle, letting me outrun him for the pure pleasure of the chase. My father. This was my father before grief carved lines into his face. "Careful, Valerius. Don't let her tire herself out before bedtime," the woman called, my mother, wearing a simple dress instead of formal gowns, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders. "Never," my father's wolf seemed to say, though I heard it more as feeling than words. He caught me gently in his massive jaws by the back of my dress, lifting me like a puppy and carrying me back to my mother. She took me in her arms, and I was safe. So completely, utterly safe. "My precious girl," she murmured, kissing my forehead. "My beautiful Maya, do you know how loved you are?" "This much." I spread my tiny arms as wide as they could go. "More," she whispered. "More than all the stars in the sky, more than all the moonlight that ever was. You are our everything." The memory shifted, darkened. I was older now, 3, maybe being tucked into a bed covered in soft blankets. My mother sat beside me, singing a lullaby in a language I was just beginning to learn. "Mama," I said sleepily, "will you always keep me safe?" Something flickered across her face, fear, quickly hidden. "Always, little moon, I promise." Then darkness, shouting, my mother's scream cutting through the night like a blade. I was being carried, not gently now, but roughly, painfully. A hooded figure held me while I cried for my mama, for my papa, for someone to make the scary person let me go. "SHH, child," a woman's voice hissed, not my mother's voice. This one was cold, sharp as winter frost. "You're going where you belong now, forgotten, erased, nothing." We entered a room lit by black candles. Other hooded figures stood in a circle, chanting words that made my skin crawl. The woman holding me, I caught a glimpse of her face in the candlelight, features twisted with hatred, placed me in the center of the circle. She pulled out a knife that gleamed with sickly green light. "With this spell I bind," she intoned. "I silence the wolf, I suppress the bloodline, I steal the power that should have been mine." The knife cut across my tiny palm. Blood welled, and the chanting grew louder, more frenzied. Dark magic poured into me like poison, wrapping around something vital and alive inside me, my wolf, and squeezing. My wolf screamed, I screamed. The woman smiled. "20 years you'll feed me," she whispered, tracing symbols on my forehead with my own blood. 20 years I'll drain what makes you special until there's nothing left but a hollow shell. And when you finally die, forgotten and alone, I'll have everything that was meant to be yours." The spell settled into my bones like chains, and suddenly I couldn't feel my wolf anymore. Couldn't feel anything except cold and emptiness and terror. "Take her to the orphanage," the woman commanded. "Make sure they believe she's abandoned, unwanted, nobody." The last thing I remembered before the memory faded was being left on cold stone steps in the rain, crying for a mother who would never come. I gasped back into consciousness in the healing chamber, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. "She saw something," Moira said urgently. "The spell is breaking down. Memories are returning." "Who did this to her?" my father demanded, and his voice carried the promise of violence. "Who cast this spell?" "A woman," I choked out. She said she'd drain me for 20 years, that she'd take what should have been." Another wave of pain cut off my words. My wolf was pushing harder now, fueled by rage at the memory, by the need for vengeance. I remember she snarled inside me. I remember her, the rejected mate, the jealous witch. I'm going to tear her apart. "Easy," I tried to soothe her, but I felt her fury as my own. We'd been stolen, tortured, made into nothing so some bitter woman could steal our power. "The binding is collapsing," Scholar Aldrich announced. "Her wolf is too strong. We can't hold her back anymore." "Then don't," Moira decided. "Let her through. Maya, listen to me. Your wolf is coming. It's going to hurt, but you have to trust her. Trust yourself. You're strong enough for this." "Are we?" I asked my wolf silently. "We survived everything else," she responded, and I felt grim determination flowing through our shared consciousness. "We'll survive this too, together." The pain built to a crescendo that whited out all thought, all sensation, everything except the feeling of something enormous forcing its way through barriers that had held for 2 decades. And then, freedom. My wolf surged forward, and I howled. The sound that tore from my throat wasn't human. It was pure wolf, rage and grief and triumph and power given voice. It resonated through the healing chambers, through the corridors beyond, through the very stones of the palace itself. Windows shattered. Crystals exploded into glittering dust. Every wolf in the palace, guards, servants, nobles, dropped to their knees, compelled by a power they couldn't resist. Even my father, the supreme Lycan king, fell to one knee. But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking inward, finally meeting the wolf who'd been fighting for us both since the moment I was stolen. She was magnificent, silver-white fur that seemed to glow with inner light, eyes that matched mine, deep blue hazel that held both sorrow and strength. And there, on her back, something I'd never seen before, the faint outline of what looked like wings. "What are you?" I breathed. "We," she corrected. "What are we?" And the answer is simple, Maya. We're not just a princess. We're not just a wolf. We're something the world hasn't seen in 5 generations. "What?" Her voice rang with pride and power. "We're a celestial Lycan, the lost bloodline, the winged warriors. And everyone who heard us is about to learn why our kind was feared." Another howl built in my chest, and this time when I released it, the sound carried beyond the palace walls, across the city, through the territories, a declaration to every supernatural creature in the kingdom. The lost princess had returned, and she was no longer prey. I collapsed back onto the bed, my wolf settling inside me, still there, still present, but no longer caged. I could feel her now, a constant awareness, a partner instead of a stranger. "That," Scholar Aldrich said weakly, adjusting his shattered spectacles, "was the most powerful emergence I've ever witnessed." My father rose shakily to his feet, and when he looked at me, his eyes were filled with tears. "You have your mother's wolf," he whispered. "The celestial bloodline, I'd hoped, but I didn't dare believe." "I don't understand," I said, exhausted beyond measure. "What does this mean?" "It means," Mora said gently, cleaning blood from my nose, "when had that started? That you're not just any princess, Maya. You're the heir to the most powerful Lycan line in history, and the spell that bound you wasn't just suppressing your wolf. It was suppressing this." She gestured at me, at the silver light still faintly glowing beneath my skin. "Someone was very afraid of what you'd become," my father added, his voice hardening. "Afraid enough to steal you as a child, to bind you, to try to drain you until nothing remained." "The woman," my wolf prompted. "Tell him about the woman." "I saw her," I said, the memory still fresh and terrible. "In my flashback, the woman who cast the spell. She said she'd drain me for 20 years, that she'd take what should have been hers." My father went very still. "What did she look like?" I described what I'd seen. The twisted features, the cold hatred, the way she'd smiled when my blood had fed the spell. Something terrible crossed my father's face. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." "Your Majesty," Mora prompted gently. "I need to make inquiries, immediately." He looked at me, and I saw fury and grief warring in his expression. "Rest now, Maya. We'll talk more when you've recovered. But I promise you, whoever did this to you will answer for it." He left quickly, almost fleeing, and I was too tired to wonder why. Mora helped me drink something that tasted like honey and herbs. "Sleep," she instructed. "Your body has been through an enormous transformation. You need rest to integrate with your wolf properly." My eyes were already closing, exhaustion pulling me under like a tide. But as I drifted off, I felt my wolf settle around me like a protective blanket, and for the first time in my entire remembered life, I wasn't alone inside my own skin. "Sleep," she murmured. "I'll keep watch. No one will hurt us while I'm here." "Thank you," I thought drowsily, "for fighting, for surviving, for waiting." "Always," she promised. "We're together now, and we're never going to be caged again." I slept deeply, dreamlessly, and when I woke hours later, the first thing I felt was her presence, constant, solid mine. My wolf, my power, my truth. And somewhere out there, the woman who'd stolen my childhood was about to learn that some things, once freed, could never be chained again. I woke to the sound of steel on steel. The clash of weapons echoed through my open window, rhythmic and precise. I dragged myself out of bed, still aching from yesterday's emergence, and peered out at the training grounds below. Dawn was just breaking, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. On the grounds, two figures sparred with an intensity that made my breath catch. One was clearly winning, a tall man with dark hair, moving with lethal grace despite visible scars that crossed his exposed arms and neck. He drove his opponent back with a series of strikes that looked more like a dance than a fight. "That's Commander Kieran," Vera said from behind me, making me jump. She'd entered so quietly I hadn't heard. The king's right hand, undefeated in single combat for 8 years. I watched as Kieran disarmed his opponent with a move so fast I almost missed it, then offered his hand to help the younger wolf up. Even from this distance, I could see him offering instruction, patient despite his obvious superiority. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. Vera smiled. "Because he's here to see you after breakfast. Your father," she still paused delicately on the word, knowing I was adjusting, "thought you might benefit from training, learning to defend yourself." My stomach dropped. "I can't fight, I don't know how to." "Which is why you'll learn." Vera laid out clothes on my bed, not a gown this time, but practical pants and a tunic in soft gray. "The commander doesn't coddle his students. He's going to push you, but he's also the best teacher in the kingdom." An hour later, fed and dressed in clothes that felt strange after years of either rags or restrictive gowns, I stood at the edge of the training grounds. My wolf stirred inside me, curious and eager. She'd been a constant presence since yesterday, commenting on everything, still marveling at her freedom. "A warrior," she said approvingly, watching Kieran dispatch another opponent. "Finally, someone who might actually be useful." Commander Kieran noticed me and dismissed his sparring partner with a nod. He approached, and I tried not to stare at the scar that ran from his left eyebrow down to his jaw, or the others that marked his knuckles and forearms like a map of violence survived. He stopped a respectful distance away and bowed, not deeply, but enough to acknowledge rank. "Princess Maya, I'm Commander Kieran Ashford. Your father has asked me to train you." His voice was rough, direct, with none of the careful gentleness everyone else used around me. Somehow, that made it easier to breathe. "I don't think I'll be very good at this," I said automatically, then winced at how weak that sounded. His dark eyes studied me with unsettling intensity. "Did I ask if you'd be good at it?" I blinked. "No, but—" "I asked if you'd train, different question." He gestured to the practice mats. "Follow me." I hurried after him, my wolf amused by his bluntness. I like him. He doesn't treat us like we're made of glass. Kieran led me to a sectioned area away from the main grounds where other warriors were training, more private. He turned to face me, arms crossed. "First question, why do you want to learn to fight?" "I don't," I admitted. "My father thought." "Wrong answer." He cut me off. "I don't train people who don't want to be here, so either find a real reason or we're done before we start." Heat flushed my cheeks. "That's not fair, you don't understand." "I understand that you spent 6 years with a man who made you feel powerless. I understand that you probably still flinch when doors slam and apologize when you haven't done anything wrong. I understand that right now, you feel like you're one wrong move away from being sent back to the basement." His expression didn't change, but something in his voice gentled slightly. "Am I wrong?" The accuracy of his words stole my breath. "No," I whispered. "Then that's your reason. You fight so you never feel powerless again. You fight so that the next time someone tries to cage you, you can break their fingers." He unfolded his arms. "Now, do you want to train, or do you want to keep being a victim?" Anger sparked in my chest, hot and unfamiliar. My wolf approved. "Good, use that." "I want to train," I said, and my voice came out stronger than expected. "Better." Kieran moved to the center of the mat. "Show me your stance, how you'd stand if someone was coming at you." I tried to remember movies I'd seen, self-defense pamphlets I'd glimpsed. I spread my feet, raised my hands awkwardly. "Terrible," Kieran said flatly. "You'd be on the ground in 2 seconds again." I adjusted. He circled me like a predator, pointing out every flaw. "Feet too close, hands too low, center of gravity all wrong. You're standing like you expect to get hit and you're already accepting it." "I don't know what I'm doing." The frustration burst out before I could stop it. "Obviously, that's why I'm teaching you." He demonstrated a proper defensive stance, balanced, ready, dangerous. Copy me. I tried, failed, tried again. Your problem isn't physical, Kieran said after my fifth attempt. It's mental. You're so busy apologizing for existing that you can't focus on the actual movements. I'm not. You've apologized 3 times in the last 5 minutes, for being slow, for asking questions, for breathing too loud. He stepped closer, and I forced myself not to back away. Here's a rule. On this training ground, no apologies unless you've actually done something worth apologizing for. Agreed. I nodded. Say it. Agreed. Good. He moved behind me, adjusting my stance with impersonal efficiency. Hands on my shoulders, pushing them back, foot nudging mine wider. You survived years with an abuser. You endured systematic torture designed to break your spirit. You emerged from a suppression spell that should have killed you. You're stronger than most warriors I've trained, and they didn't have to fight for their right to exist every single day. The words hit something deep inside me. My wolf preened. He understands. Now stop acting like you're useless and show me that strength. Something in his tone, the absolute certainty, the refusal to let me hide behind self-deprecation, made me stand straighter. I set my stance the way he'd shown me, felt the difference in balance and power. Better, he said. Again, keep that stance for 5 minutes. My legs started shaking after 2 minutes. After 4, they were screaming. I gritted my teeth, sweat beading on my forehead. Your mind wants to quit, Kieran said calmly. Your body can handle more, push through. I lasted the full 5 minutes, then collapsed onto the mat, gasping. Not bad for someone who's useless. His tone was dry. Tomorrow we'll go for 10. I can't. Can't or won't? He offered his hand to help me up. I stared at it for a moment, remembering Cassius's hands, always taking, never helping. Kieran waited patiently, no judgment in his scarred face. I took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and he pulled me to my feet with easy strength. Can implies physical impossibility, he said. Won't implies choice. You have more choice than you realize, princess. You just have to stop giving it away. We worked for another hour. He taught me how to fall without hurting myself, how to roll out of a grab, how to use someone's momentum against them. Every time I started to apologize or minimize myself, he called me on it. I'm sore, I began after stumbling. Laps, he said flatly. 3 around the grounds, go. What, why? Every time you apologize for something that doesn't warrant it, you run. Either you'll stop apologizing unnecessarily, or you'll get in great cardiovascular shape. Either way, I win. I stared at him. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. You learned that already. Now run. Fury bubbled up, hot and bright and cleansing. My wolf laughed. I really like him. I ran. By the 2nd lap, I was furious. By the 3rd, I was too angry to remember why I'd been apologizing in the first place. When I collapsed back onto the mat, Kieran was waiting with water. How do you feel? Angry, I gasped. Good, anger is honest. Anger doesn't apologize for taking up space. He sat down beside me, not close enough to crowd, but near enough to talk. You know what I see when I look at you. I shook my head, too tired to deflect. Potential, raw, untrained, but there. You've got a fighter's instincts buried under years of conditioning. Your wolf is strong. I felt her power yesterday when you emerged. Every wolf in the palace did. He took a drink from his own water skin. But strength without skill is just flailing. I can teach you the skill. The rest is up to you. Why do you care? The question slipped out. You don't know me. Your father asked me to train you. That's reason enough. He paused, then added, but I also know what it's like to be told you're worthless, to believe it, to have to claw your way back to seeing yourself as human. I looked at him with new eyes. What happened to you? I was rogue, he said simply. Cast out of my pack at 16 for being too weak, nearly died in the wilderness. Your father found me half-starved and feral and gave me a choice, join his guard or keep running. I chose to fight. He met my gaze steadily. So yes, princess, I know exactly what it feels like to be powerless. and I know what it takes to reclaim that power. Something shifted between us, a recognition, a shared understanding of survival. "Teach me," I said, not a question, a demand. His scarred face split into the first real smile I'd seen from him. "Now you're getting it. Same time tomorrow. Wear clothes you can move in and bring that anger. It's going to be useful." He stood, offering his hand again. This time I took it without hesitation. As I walked back to the palace, every muscle aching, my wolf hummed with satisfaction. "That's what respect looks like," she said. "He doesn't see a victim. He sees a warrior waiting to wake up." "I'm not a warrior," I thought back. "Not yet," she agreed, "but we will be." That evening, my father found me soaking in the enormous bath, wincing as hot water found every new bruise. "Kieran worked you hard," he observed, settling into a nearby chair. "How was it?" "Awful," I admitted. Then, surprising myself, I added, "I want to go back tomorrow." His smile was proud. "He has that effect on people. Makes you want to prove him wrong about how weak you are, even though he never actually called you weak. He's different. He's honest, sometimes brutally so, but he's also loyal to his core and one of the finest warriors I've ever known." My father's expression grew serious. "He'll push you past what you think are your limits, Maya, but he'll never push you past what you can actually handle. Trust him." I thought about Kieran's scarred hands, his blunt words, the way he'd refused to let me hide behind apologies. "I think I already do," I said quietly. My father nodded, satisfied. "Good, because you're going to need allies in the days ahead. The court is complicated, and not everyone will be pleased about your return. Because I'm a threat to their power. Because you're a reminder that their loyalty was always conditional. When you were missing, they could pretend to mourn while consolidating their own positions. Now you're back and they have to choose, support the rightful heir or scheme to undermine her." He sighed. "Politics are a different kind of combat, but just as dangerous." "Will Kieran teach me that too?" "In time. For now, focus on learning to fight with your body. The mental warfare can wait until you're stronger." I sank deeper into the bath, feeling my wolf's contentment at the day's progress. For the first time since arriving at the palace, I felt like I'd actually done something instead of just existing in a beautiful cage. My father stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Maya, I'm proud of you, for trying, for fighting, for becoming who you were always meant to be." After he left, I closed my eyes and replayed the day. Kieran's rough voice, the satisfaction of holding a stance despite shaking legs, the anger that had felt so much cleaner than fear. "We can do this," my wolf said. And for the first time, I believed her. Tomorrow would hurt. Tomorrow I'd probably fail more than I succeeded. But tomorrow I'd show up. I'd fight. I'd learn. And maybe, slowly, I'd become someone who didn't apologize for breathing. Someone strong enough to be the princess. No, the queen, this kingdom needed. 3 weeks into training, Kieran handed me a dagger instead of pointing me toward the mats. "Defense is important," he said, spinning his own blade with casual expertise. "But today we're doing something different. Follow me." He led me away from the training grounds, through corridors I'd never explored, down stone stairs that grew progressively colder and darker. My wolf stirred uneasily. "Where is he taking us?" "Commander," I ventured as we descended another flight. "Archives," he said without looking back. "Your father's been investigating your kidnapping for 20 years. He's compiled evidence, followed leads, documented everything. He wants you to see it now that you're strong enough." "Strong enough for what?" He stopped at a heavy oak door bound with iron and turned to face me. "Strong enough to handle the truth without breaking. You've come far in 3 weeks, princess. But what's behind this door might be harder than any training session." I swallowed hard but nodded. He pushed the door open. The archive room was vast, lined with shelves holding books, scrolls, and boxes. But one wall dominated the space, a massive board covered in papers, photographs, maps, and red string connecting various points like a spider's web. In the center was a portrait of me as a toddler, smiling and carefree. My father stood before the board, his back to us. Thank you for bringing her, Kieran. Your Majesty. Kieran bowed and moved to stand beside me, a solid presence. My father turned, and I saw the weight of 2 decades of grief in his eyes. I've been waiting to show you this, waiting until you were ready. He gestured to the board. This is everything I know about the night you were taken. I approached slowly, my eyes scanning the organized chaos. Guard rotation schedules, witness testimonies, financial records, security footage stills grainy and old. And there, near the bottom, a section labeled Suspects with several photographs. The night you disappeared, my father began, his voice steady but strained. There was a celebration, your mother's birthday. The palace was full of guests, nobility, allied alphas, court officials. Security was tight, but not as tight as it should have been. We were celebrating, not expecting an attack within our own walls. He pointed to a timeline written in precise script. You were taken between midnight and 2 a.m. Your mother discovered you missing when she went to check on you before bed. She pursued your kidnapper, tracked them by scent into the eastern woods. That's where she was killed, defending you until her last breath. My chest tightened. My wolf whimpered softly. Our mother died for us. The attacker used magic to mask their scent, my father continued. But they made mistakes. Small ones, but enough. They paid off 3 guards to look the other way during their shift. They altered security logs to hide their movements. They used a portal spell that left residual traces. Kieran stepped forward, pointing to a cluster of documents. I've spent the last 2 weeks re-examining the evidence with fresh eyes. The payment to the guards came from an intermediary, but we traced it back through multiple accounts. He pulled out a bank record highlighted in yellow. The money originated from a pack in the Northern Territories. My stomach dropped. Cassius's pack. Yes, my father's voice turned cold. Which initially made me suspect Cassius himself, except he would have been barely 18 at the time. Too young to orchestrate something this complex. But his mother wouldn't be, Kieran said quietly. The name hung in the air like poison. Elara. The woman who'd raised Cassius, who'd sent him those cryptic messages, who'd told him to control me or lose everything. There's more. My father pulled out a guest registry, his finger marking one name. Elara Blackwood, Luna of the Northern Pack, was present at court the week before you disappeared. She attended multiple functions, had access to the palace layout, could have observed guard rotations and your routine. My wolf snarled inside me, the woman from the vision, the one who cast the spell. Her face, it matches. I saw her, I breathed. In the memory that surfaced during my emergence, the woman who cast the suppression spell, she said, my voice cracked. She said she'd drain me for 20 years, that she'd take what should have been hers. My father's face went ashen. Show me, please, show me exactly what you remember. I closed my eyes and pulled up the terrible memory. The hooded figures, the black candles, the knife gleaming with sickly light. But this time I focused on the woman's face, the moment when her hood had slipped, revealing features twisted with hatred and bitter triumph. When I opened my eyes, my father had pulled out a photograph from the suspect board, a formal portrait of a beautiful woman with sharp features and cold eyes. Is this her? The resemblance to Cassius was unmistakable, same bone structure, same calculating gaze. But where his face held weakness disguised as strength, hers held pure malice. Yes, I whispered. That's her, that's the woman who took me. My father's hand clenched around the photograph, crumpling it. I'd hoped I was wrong. I'd prayed to every god I don't believe in that it wasn't her. You knew, the betrayal stung. You knew she might have done this and you didn't tell me. I suspected. There's a difference. He moved to a chair and sank into it, suddenly looking every one of his centuries. Elara Blackwood was my mate, Maya, my fated mate, assigned by destiny when I was barely old enough to understand what that meant. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Kieran's hand found my shoulder, steadying me. The mate bond is supposed to be sacred, my father continued, his voice heavy with old pain. Unbreakable, perfect, but Elara and I were wrong for each other from the start. She craved power and status. I wanted genuine partnership. She saw the crown as her birthright through our bond. I saw it as a burden to be shared with someone who understood its weight. He stood and paced to the board, tracing the red strings with one finger. I tried for 5 years. 5 years of a cold bed and colder conversations. 5 years watching her become more bitter, more resentful, more convinced that I was deliberately denying her what she deserved. And then I met your mother. His voice softened on the last words, and I saw the ghost of old love cross his features. Lyanna wasn't my fated mate, she was my chosen one, and the difference was everything. She loved me not because destiny demanded it, but because we chose each other every day. She understood leadership, sacrifice, duty, but she also understood joy, laughter, partnership. He turned back to me. When I told Alara I was breaking our bond to marry Lyanna, she looked me in the eye and said, "You'll regret this. You'll lose everything you love, and I'll be there to watch you suffer." "And you didn't think she meant it literally?" I asked, unable to keep the accusation from my voice. "I thought she meant politically, socially. I exiled her from court, stripped her of her title as my mate, made it clear she had no claim to the throne." His jaw tightened. "I never imagined she'd target an innocent child. My child. I underestimated how deep her hatred ran." Kieran spoke up, his voice professional. "The magical signature on the suppression spell matches known samples of Alara's work. She's a powerful witch. It's how she became Luna of the Northern Pack after you rejected her. She married Cassius's father within a year and consolidated power through both political maneuvering and dark magic. So she stole me, bound my wolf, and drained my power for revenge." The pieces were clicking together in a horrifying mosaic. "She watched me suffer for 20 years, knowing who I really was." "Not just watched," my father said grimly. "She actively orchestrated it. The orphanage where you were found. She funded it through shell companies. The adoption that placed you with her son. She arranged it. Every moment of your suffering was designed, Maya. She built you a prison and made sure you never even knew there were bars." The enormity of it crashed over me. My entire life, the orphanage, the adoption, being mated to Cassius, 6 years of abuse, all of it had been one woman's elaborate revenge plot. "Cassius," I said suddenly. "Does he know? Did he know who I was?" My father and Kieran exchanged glances. "We don't know," Kieran admitted. "He could be complicit, or he could be another pawn in his mother's game. The timing suggests he didn't know initially. He was too young when you were taken. But whether she told him later, whether she's been controlling his actions." "We need to find out," I said, and my voice came out steady despite the storm raging inside me. "We need proof, not just suspicions and magical signatures, real, concrete evidence that will hold up before the High Council." My father looked at me with something like pride. "That's why I wanted you to see this. Because we need your help, Maya. You know Cassius better than anyone. You've seen how his mother influences him, the messages she sends, the control she exerts. If we're going to build a case strong enough to bring her to justice, we need your testimony, your memories, your willingness to face them both." My wolf growled. "Good. I want to face them, want to make them answer for what they did to us." But beneath the anger, fear coiled. Facing Cassius was one thing. Facing the woman who'd stolen my childhood, bound my wolf, and fed off my power for 2 decades. That was something else entirely. "What if she's stronger than me?" I asked quietly. "What if her magic is nothing compared to what you've already survived?" Kieran interrupted firmly. "You broke through a suppression spell that should have been unbreakable. You emerged with power that forced every wolf in the kingdom to kneel. You're stronger than she ever anticipated, Princess. That's why she's afraid." "How do you know she's afraid?" "Because she's still draining power from somewhere." My father pulled out another document, recent medical reports. "The healers detected traces of the same spell signature in your mate bond with Cassius. She's been siphoning through the connection, using it as a conduit even after you escaped her direct control." Horror washed through me. The bond. That's why she told him to control me or lose everything. If I break the mate bond, she loses her power source. "Exactly." My father's eyes blazed with fury. "Which means we have leverage. She needs you, Maya. Needs you compliant, needs you weak, needs that bond intact. The moment you sever it completely, she begins to die." "Then let's kill her," I said, and my wolf's savage agreement echoed through me. "We will," my father promised. "But we do it legally, publicly. We expose her crimes before the High Council, we show the world what she is, and then we execute her according to the law. No shadows, no secrets. She made you invisible for 20 years. Now we make her crimes impossible to ignore." I looked at the board, at the web of evidence spanning 2 decades, at the portrait of myself as a toddler, innocent and doomed, at the woman who'd stolen everything and smiled while doing it. "When do we start?" I asked. Kieran's scarred face split into a fierce grin. "Now, we're going to Cassius's territory tomorrow. Your father has arranged a formal investigation under his authority as Supreme King. We'll search the pack house, interview witnesses, and gather every piece of evidence we can find. And if Alara tries to stop us?" "Let her try," my father said, and power rolled off him in waves. "I've been patient for 20 years. I've been methodical and careful and restrained. But if she stands between me and justice for my daughter, I will burn her pack to the ground and scatter the ashes." The raw fury in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it felt like vindication, like someone finally caring enough to rage on my behalf. "I'm coming with you," I said. "I need to confront them both." "Maya," my father started. "No," I cut him off, drawing on every ounce of strength Kieran had been building in me. "You said I was strong enough for the truth. Well, I'm strong enough for this too. She stole my life. I deserve to look her in the eye when she answers for it." My father studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well, but Kieran stays by your side every moment, and if things become dangerous—" "I run," I finished. "I'm not stupid, but I'm also not hiding anymore." "Good," my wolf approved. "Time to show them what we've become, what we're capable of when we're not chained." That night, I stood at my window looking out at the stars, my father's words echoing in my mind. "You'll lose everything you love, and I'll be there to watch you suffer." Alara had made good on her threat. She'd taken his daughter, killed his wife, and poisoned his existence with grief and guilt for 20 years. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd let me survive long enough to become dangerous. Tomorrow, we'd begin unraveling her conspiracy. Tomorrow, we'd gather the evidence that would destroy her. And when the time came, when we finally had everything we needed, I'd be there to watch her fall. Not as the scared girl she'd created, but as the princess, the warrior she'd never imagined I could become. The shift happened without warning. One moment I was sparring with Kieran on the training grounds, executing a throw he'd taught me last week. The next, rage exploded through me, white-hot and overwhelming, as my wolf surged forward with a force I couldn't contain. "Out," she demanded. "I need out, now." "Maya," Kieran's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Your eyes." Pain ripped through my body as bones began to reshape, as my wolf tore through barriers I didn't even know existed. I'd never shifted before, didn't know how, but my wolf didn't care about my inexperience. She was done being patient. I screamed as my spine curved, as my hands became paws, as silver-white fur erupted across my skin like wildfire. The transformation was agony and ecstasy combined, every cell in my body rewriting itself into something other. And then, impossibly, wonderfully, terrifyingly, I wasn't alone in my skin anymore. We were one being, one consciousness, and the world exploded into clarity. I could smell everything. The leather of Kieran's training gear, the steel of distant weapons, the fierce scent of guards rushing toward us. I could hear heartbeats like drums, whispered conversations from the palace hundreds of yards away, the rustle of leaves in trees a mile distant. But more than that, I could feel power radiating from my core like heat from a forge. It pulsed with my heartbeat, demanding recognition, demanding submission. Around me, every wolf on the training grounds collapsed to their knees. Guards, warriors, even Kieran, all dropping without conscious choice, compelled by something primal that recognized a power greater than their own. "What's happening?" I thought frantically. "We're whole," my wolf answered, and I felt her savage joy. "Finally, completely whole. Look at us." I caught my reflection in a polished shield someone had dropped. The wolf staring back was massive, easily twice the size of any wolf I'd ever seen. My fur was silver white, gleaming with an otherworldly quality like moonlight made solid. My eyes blazed with blue hazel fire. And extending from my shoulders, shimmering and impossible, were wings. Not physical wings of feather and bone, but constructs of pure moonfire, translucent and ethereal, crackling with power that made the air around me shimmer. No, I thought, terror rising. This is too much, I can't. But my wolf was already moving, muscles bunching, and then we were airborne. The wings caught the wind, and we soared upward with a speed that stole breath. The palace shrank beneath us, the training grounds becoming toy-sized, and still we climbed higher. I heard shouts below, my father's voice commanding people to track me, but I couldn't stop. Couldn't control the panic driving us higher, faster, away from all those kneeling wolves and the weight of their forced submission. We made them kneel, I thought, horrified. We didn't give them a choice. That's what power is, my wolf responded, but I heard uncertainty beneath her words. She was as unsettled as I was. We flew until the palace was a distant glimmer, until we reached mountains I'd only seen from my window. We landed on a cliff edge overlooking a valley painted silver by moonlight, and I shifted back without meaning to, the transformation happening in reverse, leaving me naked and shaking on cold stone. I curled into myself, arms wrapped tight around my knees, and tried not to scream. This was what I'd become, this terrifying, overwhelming force that could compel obedience without trying. This was the power that had been bound inside me, and now that it was free, I didn't know how to control it. What if I hurt someone? What if I became like Cassius, like Alara, drunk on power and using it to hurt anyone weaker? Maya, Kieran's voice cut through my spiral. I looked up to see him climbing the cliff face, moving with practiced ease despite the treacherous handholds. How did you find me? My voice was raw. Tracked your scent and watched which direction you flew. He pulled himself onto the ledge and sat a careful distance away, not crowding. That was quite an exit. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I couldn't control. No apologies, remember? He pulled off his jacket and tossed it to me. I wrapped it around myself gratefully. You shifted for the first time. It's overwhelming for anyone. The fact that you're a celestial Lycan with wings made of moonfire just makes it more intense. I made everyone kneel, I whispered. I didn't ask them to, I didn't want them to, but they had no choice. That's the royal command. It's part of your bloodline. Kieran gazed out at the valley, giving me space to process. Your father has it too, though not as strong as yours appears to be. It's an evolutionary advantage, a way to maintain order in crisis, to protect the pack from internal threats. It's terrifying. Yes, he agreed simply. Power usually is. I looked at him through tear-blurred eyes. What if I become like them? What if having this power turns me into someone who uses it to hurt people, to control them, to make them feel as small as I felt? Kieran was quiet for a long moment, his scarred face thoughtful in the moonlight. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. I told you I was rogue, that your father found me and gave me a second chance. He paused. What I didn't tell you is why I was cast out. My pack believed in strength above all else. If you couldn't fight, couldn't dominate, couldn't prove your worth through violence, you were nothing. And I was different. I questioned the alpha's orders when they were cruel. I protected weaker wolves instead of exploiting them. I refused to participate in their games of humiliation and control. He rubbed his scarred knuckles absently. They beat me for it, repeatedly. Told me I was weak, that compassion was a flaw, that power was the only thing that mattered. And when I still wouldn't break, wouldn't become what they wanted, they declared me rogue and tried to kill me. Kieran, I survived through luck and stubbornness. And when your father found me, half dead and convinced I was worthless, he said something I've never forgotten. Kieran turned to face me fully. He said, power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. A cruel person with power becomes a tyrant. A kind person with power becomes a protector. The power itself is neutral, it's the person wielding it that matters. He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. You're afraid of becoming like them. That fear alone proves you won't. Cassius never questioned his right to hurt you. Alara never doubted her revenge was justified. But you're terrified of causing harm, even accidentally. That's not the thinking of someone power will corrupt. But I made them kneel, I insisted. I took away their choice. For 30 seconds during your first shift when you had no control. His voice was firm. And you hated it. You fled rather than bask in it. That's the difference, Maya. Cruel people love the feeling of power over others. You're repulsed by it. I wiped my eyes, his words settling something in my chest. You really believe that? I know it. He shifted closer, careful and deliberate in his movements. You've had power all along, you know. Different power, but power nonetheless. What power? I was helpless. You had the power to endure, to survive 6 years of systematic cruelty without becoming cruel yourself. The power to hope, even when hope seemed foolish. The power to forgive, even when no one deserved it. He held my gaze. Those are harder powers to wield than the ability to make people kneel, and you've been using them every day of your life. His words cracked something open inside me. I'd spent so long thinking of myself as powerless, as weak, as nothing. But he was right. Survival was its own kind of strength. Hope was its own kind of power. I'm still afraid, I admitted quietly. Good, fear keeps you honest. It's the people who aren't afraid of their own power that you need to watch out for. He smiled slightly. Besides, you won't be wielding that power alone. You'll have advisors, guards, your father's wisdom, and... He paused, something shifting in his expression. People who care about you. People who'll tell you the truth even when it's hard to hear. People like you. If you'll have me. His voice carried a note I'd never heard before, uncertainty, vulnerability. As your commander, your teacher, He stopped, seeming to catch himself. Your ally. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. The wind carried the scent of pine and snow, and below us the valley glittered like it was full of stars. Thank you, I said finally, for following me, for not being afraid of what I am. I'm not afraid of you. His voice was absolute. I'm in awe of you, there's a difference. Heat flushed through me that had nothing to do with embarrassment. The way he looked at me, not with pity or fear or worship, but with respect and something that might be admiration, made me feel seen in a way I never had before. We should get back, I said, though part of me wanted to stay on this cliff forever, away from expectations and thrones and the weight of my newfound power. My father is probably worried. Terrified, more likely. You flew off without warning and he had no idea if you'd ever come back. Kieran stood and offered his hand. Can you shift again, or should we climb down? I looked at his scarred hand, remembering all the times he'd offered it, to help me up after training, to steady me during difficult exercises, to pull me back from the edge of giving up. He'd never taken advantage, never used his strength against me, never made me feel small despite being able to break me in half. He's good, my wolf said approvingly. Strong but not cruel, powerful but not corrupt. He sees us clearly. Is that what you think of him? I asked her silently. I think he's the kind of wolf who makes us want to be better, she responded. The kind worth trusting. I took Kieran's hand and let him pull me to my feet. I'll try to shift again, but if I lose control, I'll be here to help you find it. His grip on my hand tightened briefly. You're not alone in this, Maya, not anymore. I closed my eyes and reached for my wolf. This time, instead of fighting the transformation, I embraced it. The shift was smoother, less painful, and when I opened my eyes, I was looking at Kieran from my wolf's height, which put him at my shoulder level. He ran his hand along my neck, fingers tangling in my silver-white fur. Beautiful, he murmured, and I wasn't sure if he meant my wolf form or something else. I spread my wings experimentally. They unfurled with a sound like silk catching wind, and Moonfire danced along their edges. Show off, Kieran said, but he was grinning. Think you can carry a passenger? We're strong enough, my wolf assured me. I lowered myself so he could climb onto my back. His weight settled between my wings, solid and warm, and then I was running toward the cliff edge, muscles bunching, and we were airborne. This time the flight wasn't driven by panic. This time I felt the joy of it, the wind in my fur, the power in my wings, the absolute freedom of the sky. Kieran's hands gripped my fur gently, and I heard his breathless laugh of wonder. We circled the mountains once before heading back to the palace, and for those few minutes I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I could handle this power without becoming a monster. Because Kieran was right, power revealed what was already there. And despite everything, despite 6 years of cruelty and a lifetime of being told I was worthless, I was still kind, still hopeful, still choosing compassion over vengeance. That was my real power. The rest was just window dressing. We landed on the palace grounds to find my father waiting, relief and wonder warring on his face. I shifted back, and Kieran immediately offered his jacket again before anyone else could see me. "You flew," my father breathed, approaching slowly. "Maya, you flew. Do you understand how rare that is? How powerful?" "I'm beginning to," I said quietly. He looked between us, me wrapped in Kieran's jacket, Kieran standing close like a guardian, the understanding that had formed between us obvious even without words. Something crossed my father's face. Approval, maybe, or satisfaction. "Tomorrow we leave for Cassius's territory," he said. "But tonight rest, you've earned it." As I walked back to my chambers with Kieran beside me, my wolf hummed contentedly. "We're going to be all right," she said. And for the first time, I truly believed her. The pain woke me at 3 in the morning, a sharp, twisting ache in my chest that made me gasp and curl into myself. "He's here," my wolf growled. "In the palace, I can feel him." I pressed my hand over my heart, feeling the mate bond pulse like an infected wound. Ever since my wolf had emerged, the connection to Cassius had become impossible to ignore. Before, it had been a vague background pull, easily dismissed. Now it was a constant awareness, a golden thread connecting us that I could neither sever nor escape. And right now, that thread was pulling taut with his proximity. I dragged myself out of bed and stumbled to the window. Below, in the courtyard illuminated by torchlight, a familiar figure emerged from a carriage. Cassius, dressed in formal court attire, here for some diplomatic function my father had mentioned yesterday. The moment my eyes found him, the bond flared, need and recognition and a twisted sort of longing that made me want to vomit. Because it wasn't real. It was just biology, fate's cruel joke, a connection that existed whether I wanted it or not. "Make it stop," I begged my wolf. "I can't," she said, and I heard her own frustration. "Until it's formally severed, we're bound to him, tied to his emotions, his desires, his presence. It's agony." A knock at my door. "Princess," Healer Moira's gentle voice. "I felt your distress through the palace wards. May I enter?" I wrapped a robe around myself and opened the door. Moira came in carrying a bag of supplies, her expression sympathetic. "Alpha Cassius has arrived for the Summit Council meeting," she said, gesturing for me to sit. "Your father couldn't deny him entry, it's official pack business, but we can help manage the pain." "Why does it hurt so much now?" I asked as she placed her glowing hands over my chest. Before my wolf emerged, I barely felt the bond. "Because you're complete now. Your wolf recognizes the mate connection on a primal level that your human side could ignore." She pulled out a vial of silvery liquid. "Drink this. It will dull the bond's effects, but it won't eliminate them entirely. Nothing can, short of formal severance." I downed the potion. It tasted like moonlight and ash, and within minutes the ache faded to a manageable throb. "How long until we can sever it?" I asked. Moira's expression turned grave. "That's complicated. Mate bonds are sacred law, Maya. Breaking one requires either mutual consent or proof of grievous harm before the High Council. Your father is building a case, but it takes time. Until then," she paused. "Until then, you'll feel everything he feels when he's near. His emotions will bleed into yours, and if he's with another woman." "I'll feel that too," I finished, nausea rising. "Yes, I'm sorry. It's one of the cruelest aspects of the bond. You can't escape your mate's betrayal even when you want to." After Moira left, I stood at the window watching Cassius disappear into the palace. My wolf paced restlessly inside me, torn between the biological imperative to seek him out and the rational hatred of what he'd done to us. We should sleep, I told her. We should rip his throat out, she countered. I couldn't entirely disagree. The Summit Council meeting was held 3 days later in the Grand Hall. As the recognized heir, I was required to attend, sitting beside my father on the raised dais while various alphas presented grievances, negotiated treaties, and engaged in the careful dance of supernatural politics. Cassius was there, of course, sitting among the northern delegation, looking polished and powerful in a way that made my chest ache with phantom longing I didn't actually feel. But then she walked in. Selene, the Southern Alpha's daughter. Beautiful, confident, everything I'd never been. She took a seat near Cassius, and I saw the moment their eyes met, saw the interest, the attraction, the possibility. The bond flared like someone had driven a knife between my ribs. I gasped quietly, hand flying to my chest. Kieran, standing guard behind my throne, leaned down. "Princess." "I'm fine," I lied through gritted teeth. But I wasn't fine. I could feel Cassius's attraction to Selene like it was my own, the quickening pulse, the heated interest, the desire. It flooded through the mate bond, indifferent to the fact that it was tearing me apart from the inside. My father noticed my distress and called a brief recess. "Get her out of here," he told Kieran quietly. Kieran helped me to a private antechamber, where I collapsed into a chair and tried to breathe through the pain. "He's doing this on purpose," Kieran said flatly. "He knows you can feel it. He's exploiting the bond." "How do you know?" "Because he keeps looking at you while he flirts with her. He's watching your reactions." Kieran's jaw tightened. "It's psychological warfare, Maya. He's trying to hurt you." And it was working. Every smile Cassius gave Selene, every subtle touch, every flash of genuine attraction. I felt it all like acid in my veins. "I need to confront him," I said, standing on shaky legs. "I need to make this stop." "Maya." "I can't live like this, Kieran. Feeling his emotions, his desires, knowing he's weaponizing our bond. I need to face him." Kieran studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll arrange it, private meeting, but I'm staying in the room." "Fine, just make it happen." They brought Cassius to a secure meeting room that evening. He entered with his usual confidence, but I saw the calculation in his eyes, the way he was already planning his approach, his manipulation. "Maya," he said my name like a caress, and the bond pulsed. "You look well, more than well, you look." "Stop." I held up a hand, and power rippled through the word, my celestial wolf lending weight to my command. "You're going to listen. You're going to tell me the truth. And you're going to stop using our bond as a weapon, or I swear I'll petition the High Council for emergency severance and damn the consequences." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. He hadn't expected this version of me, the one who could make demands instead of pleas. "You felt it," he said, not quite a question. "When I was with Selene." "You know I did. That's why you did it." "Yes," the admission was casual, cruel. "You left me, Maya, embarrassed me in front of the entire supernatural world. What did you expect? That I'd pine for you? That I'd respect a bond you clearly don't want?" "I expected you to have basic decency, to not deliberately hurt someone you claim to care about." He laughed, sharp and bitter. "Care about? Is that what you think this was? Some grand romance?" He moved closer, and Kieran tensed, but Cassius ignored him. "You want the truth, Maya? Fine, here's the truth." He ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time I saw genuine emotion beneath the calculated facade. Frustration, resentment, something that might have been pain. "My mother told me to take you as a mate," he said flatly. "She found you at the orphanage, arranged the adoption, orchestrated everything. She said you'd make me powerful, that despite being wolfless you had something valuable. I was 18 and stupid enough to believe her." The revelation hit like cold water. She planned it all. Every moment. And when you turned out to be exactly what you appeared, wolfless, weak, an embarrassment, she was furious. At you, at me, at fate itself for not giving her what she wanted. His voice turned bitter. Do you know what it's like, having a mother who sees you as nothing but a tool for her ambitions, who punishes every failure with weeks of cold silence and subtle cruelty? Yes, I said quietly. I do, because I had a mate who did the same thing. He flinched. I was trying to survive her disappointment. Every time I was kind to you, every time I showed you affection, she'd remind me that I was alpha, that I couldn't appear weak by caring for a defective mate, that the pack needed to see strength, not compassion. So you chose to hurt me instead. I chose to survive. The words burst out, raw and desperate. You think I wanted to lock you in the basement, to watch you flinch every time I walked into a room, to see the hope die in your eyes year after year. He turned away. I hated it, hated what I was becoming. But every time I tried to be better, tried to treat you like you mattered, my mother would punish you for it, withhold your food, increase your workload, make your life even more miserable until I fell back in line. The bond pulsed with his genuine anguish, and I felt the truth of his words. He wasn't lying. He'd been trapped too, caught between his mother's expectations and his own dying conscience. But understanding didn't erase the damage. You still had a choice, I said. Every moment you had a choice. You could have told me the truth, could have worked with me instead of against me, could have protected me from her instead of protecting yourself. And she would have killed you, Cassius said flatly. The moment I showed genuine care, the moment you became more than a burden to me, she would have eliminated you. I know my mother, Maya. I know what she's capable of. Keeping you at arm's length, treating you as worthless, it was the only way to keep you alive. That's a convenient excuse for abuse. It's the truth. He spun back to face me, and I saw tears tracking down his face. Do you think I'm proud of what I did? Do you think I sleep well at night knowing I broke you piece by piece to satisfy a woman who never loved me? I'm not asking for forgiveness, Maya. I know I don't deserve it, but you asked for truth, and here it is. I was her puppet as much as you were her victim. Kieran spoke for the first time, his voice cold. A puppet can cut its own strings. You chose not to. Because cutting them meant watching Maya die. Cassius's control shattered completely. She had a death spell on you, Maya, woven into the suppression binding. If I ever formally marked you, ever acknowledged you as my Luna, ever showed that you mattered, the spell would activate and kill you instantly. My mother made that very clear. The room went silent. That's why you introduced me as a servant at the summit, I whispered, pieces clicking together. You weren't just embarrassed. You were trying to save my life. For all the good it did. Cassius slumped against the wall. The moment the king recognized you, the moment you became valuable to someone else, all my careful balancing became worthless. She sent me message after message, control you or lose everything. She knew her power source was slipping away. Her power source, I repeated. That's all I ever was to her, to you. No, he met my eyes and the bond carried the truth of his words. At first, maybe, but somewhere along the way you became real to me, not just a tool or a burden, a person, someone who deserved better than what I could give. He laughed bitterly, which made hurting you even worse. I looked at this man, this broken, trapped, pathetic man, and felt the mate bond pulling me toward compassion, toward understanding, toward forgiveness I didn't want to give. Your cage doesn't excuse mine, I said finally. Your suffering doesn't erase what you did to me. You want absolution. You'll have to find it somewhere else. I'm not asking for absolution. Cassius straightened, wiping his face. I'm asking you to understand that when you destroy my mother, and you will destroy her, I can see that now you're also setting me free. She's controlled every aspect of my life since birth, and I hate her for it almost as much as I hate myself. Then help us, Kieran said. Testify against her, provide evidence, prove you're choosing differently now. Cassius looked at him, then at me. If I do that, she'll kill me. The moment she realizes I've turned on her, I'm dead. Then you'll die knowing you finally did one decent thing, I said. The harshness in my voice surprised even me. You don't get to play victim when you had power I never had. You're an alpha. You had resources, allies, options. I had nothing but the cage you helped build. The truth of it hung between us. He'd been trapped, yes, but his cage had been gilded. Mine had been iron. I'll think about it, he said finally. Testifying, but I want something in return. You're not in a position to negotiate. Break the mate bond. His voice was steady. Officially, publicly, permanently, because as long as it exists, she can use it, and I can keep hurting you without meaning to. We'll both be free. The offer should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like the final death of something that had never really been alive. Done, I said. Help us destroy her, and I'll sever the bond the moment the High Council allows it. Cassius nodded, and for just a moment I saw the man he might have been if his mother hadn't poisoned every aspect of his development. Someone capable of growth, of change, of choosing better. But that man had arrived too late. You should go, I said, suddenly exhausted. And Cassius, stay away from Selene. I don't care if you court her after the bond is broken, but while I can still feel it, show me that decency at least. He left without another word. Kieran waited until the door closed before speaking. Do you believe him about trying to protect you? I believe he convinced himself that's what he was doing, I said carefully. But I also believe he was primarily protecting himself. The truth is probably somewhere in between. And you're really going to break the bond. The moment it's legal. I rubbed my chest where the ache had returned. I can't live like this, Kieran, feeling his emotions, his betrayals, his pain. It's killing me slowly. Then we'll make it happen. His hand found my shoulder, steady and warm. One more chain to break, Maya, and then you'll be completely free. That night, alone in my chambers, I felt Cassius through the bond. His anguish, his self-loathing, his genuine grief over what he'd become. It would have been easier if he was purely evil, purely cruel. But people rarely were. He was a victim of his mother's manipulation, and also my abuser. He'd suffered under her control, and also chosen to hurt me. Both things were true, both things mattered. But only one of them was my responsibility to bear. And I was done carrying his pain along with my own. Soon, my wolf promised. Soon we'll be free of him forever. I just hoped we'd survive the breaking. The invitation arrived on black parchment with silver script, delivered by a messenger who wouldn't meet my eyes. Emergency session of the High Council. Evidence has been presented questioning the legitimacy of Princess Maya's bloodline. Your presence is required. Tonight, midnight, the Grand Council chamber. I stared at the words until they blurred, my wolf snarling inside me. They're coming for us, she growled. They're going to try to destroy everything we've built. Maya, my father entered my study, holding an identical invitation. His face was carved from stone, fury radiating from every line. This is Cassius. It has to be. He's been meeting with the old nobility for weeks. What evidence could they possibly have? I asked, though dread was already coiling in my stomach. The healers confirmed my bloodline. The moonstone bracelet responded to me. I have the celestial wolf. They'll claim it's fabricated. Illusion, magic, bribery, manipulation. He crumpled the invitation in his fist. I should have moved faster. Should have had you coronated immediately instead of waiting for the formal ceremony. You were trying to do it properly, by the law. I set down my own invitation with shaking hands. What happens at this session? They present their evidence. We present ours. The High Council votes on whether you're the legitimate heir. His jaw tightened. But Maya, some of these council members have been positioning themselves for power since you disappeared. They've built alliances, accumulated wealth, gained influence. Your return threatens all of that. So they'll vote against me, regardless of truth. Some will. Not all. I have allies on the council, but it's going to be close. He moved to the window, looking out at the palace grounds where workers were erecting pavilions for tomorrow's coronation ceremony. If they rule against you, the coronation is canceled. You'll be stripped of your title, and depending on what evidence they've manufactured, you could face charges of fraud. The world tilted slightly. Charges, they could arrest me. If they can convince the council you're an imposter who's manipulated the king using dark magic, yes. He turned back to me, and I saw fear beneath his anger. They're not just trying to delegitimize you, Maya. They're trying to destroy you completely. Kieran entered without knocking, his expression grim. I've been monitoring the situation. Cassius has been meeting with at least 7 council members over the past week. Large sums of money have changed hands. And, he paused, clearly reluctant to continue. Say it, I demanded. They've brought in a witness, the witch who cast your original suppression spell. His voice was tight with controlled rage. Ilara, she's here in the palace, under guard, claiming she'll testify about the true nature of your binding. Ice flooded my veins. She's going to lie. She's going to say the spell was recent, that I'm not really the princess, that this is all an elaborate con. Yes, Kieran moved to stand beside me, a solid presence. But she'll also be under oath spell. The council will know if she's lying. Unless she's found a way around it, my father said darkly. Ilara is powerful, manipulative, and she's had 20 years to plan this. We can't underestimate her. I looked between them, my father, who'd searched for me for 2 decades, and Kieran, who'd taught me to fight back. Both of them ready to defend me, but both of them also knowing this battle would be fought with words and law, not swords and strength. What do I need to do? I asked. My father's expression softened slightly. Tell the truth. Present yourself with confidence. Don't let them see fear. He crossed to me and took my hands. You are my daughter, Maya, my heir, my blood. No amount of lies can change that, but you'll have to prove it to people who don't want to believe. I can do that, I said, trying to sound certain. Can we? My wolf asked quietly. We have to. The Grand Council chamber was ancient stone and dark wood, lit by floating orbs of magical light that cast sharp shadows. 23 council members sat in a semicircle facing a raised platform where I stood with my father. Kieran waited with the guards, his hand never far from his sword. Cassius sat among the petitioners, looking every inch the wronged alpha. Beside him sat nobles I recognized from court functions. Lady Mordine, who'd lost influence when my father rejected her daughter as a potential match. Lord Thuron, whose land claims conflicted with the crown's. Alpha Gregor, who'd expected to be named heir himself before my return. And there, in chains but smiling, was Ilara. She looked older than in her portrait. The 20 years of draining my power hadn't been enough to completely stave off time. But her eyes were sharp, calculating, and when they met mine, they held such malice that I physically recoiled. Don't show fear, my wolf commanded. Stand tall, we're the princess, she's the criminal. High Counselor Mordecai called the session to order with 3 strikes of his staff. We are here to examine evidence regarding the legitimacy of the crown's recognition of Maya Thornwood as the lost princess and rightful heir. Who brings this challenge? Cassius stood, and I felt the mate bond pulse with his nervous energy. I do, High Counselor, along with concerned members of the supernatural community who question whether His Majesty has been deceived by an elaborate fraud. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. My father's hand found my shoulder, steadying. Present your evidence, Mordecai said. Cassius gestured to an aide who brought forward a stack of documents. First, we have testimony from the orphanage where this woman was allegedly found. Their records show she arrived at age 5 with no memories and no identifying marks, convenient for someone trying to fabricate a royal identity. The suppression spell caused memory loss, my father interjected. The healers have documented this. Healers who serve the crown and have every reason to support your Majesty's claim, Lady Mordine said smoothly. We question their objectivity. Second, Cassius continued, we have magical analysis showing that the suppression spell binding her wolf is recent, no more than 5 years old, not 20 as claimed. That's a lie, I said, my voice ringing out before I could stop myself. The spell was cast when I was 3 years old. I remember. Convenient memories that surfaced only after being identified as the princess, Lord Thuron interrupted. Memories that could easily be implanted through mental manipulation magic. The council members were nodding, and terror clawed up my throat. They'd planned for every counterargument, twisted every piece of evidence. Third, Cassius said, and now his voice carried false regret, we have a witness, the witch who cast the alleged suppression spell. She's agreed to testify under oath bond about the true nature of the magic binding this woman's wolf. Alara was brought forward, her chains clinking. She looked at my father with theatrical sadness. "Your Majesty, I'm so sorry. I never meant for the deception to go this far." "Speak your testimony," Mordecai commanded, and I saw him weave the oath spell, golden threads that wrapped around Alara, compelling truth. Except she was smiling. "5 years ago," Alara began, her voice steady despite the spell, "I was approached by this woman," she gestured at me, "and a man I later learned was a con artist from the Eastern Territories. They paid me handsomely to create a suppression spell that would make her appear wolfless, then allow a dramatic emergence at a strategic moment." "No," I breathed, "that's not." "They showed me portraits of the lost princess, helped me create a glamour to match her features. They researched the king's history, found the story of the rejected mate, and wove it into their con." Alara's voice was earnest, convincing. "I thought it was just a scam to extort money from nobles. I didn't realize they planned to deceive the king himself until it was too late." The oath spell glowed steadily. She wasn't lying, or rather, the spell thought she wasn't lying. "How?" I demanded. "How is she bypassing the oath spell?" "She believes her own lies," my father said quietly. "She's used memory magic on herself, implanted false memories that she genuinely believes are true. The spell can't detect lies if the speaker thinks they're telling the truth." "Brilliant, horrible, perfectly Alara." "The suppression spell I cast was temporary by design," Alara continued. "Meant to last only a few years before allowing a controlled emergence. And when it broke, right on schedule, they used it as proof of her royal bloodline." She looked at the council with tears in her eyes. "I'm so ashamed. I helped perpetrate this fraud against our beloved king, and I'm here now to make it right." The council chamber erupted. Some members shouting that this proved their suspicions, others demanding additional evidence, still others looking to my father for guidance. "She's lying," I shouted over the chaos. "Everything she said is fabricated." "The oath spell says otherwise," Lady Mordine said coldly. "Unless you're claiming you can detect deception better than ancient magic." "I'm claiming she's manipulated the spell." "A convenient excuse," Lord Thuron stood. "High Counselor, we've seen enough. This woman is clearly an impostor who has deceived our king during his grief. We should vote immediately to strip her of all titles and prosecute her for fraud." "We haven't presented our evidence yet," my father said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "You will hear the Crown's defense before any vote is taken." Mordecai nodded reluctantly. "The Crown may present." My father stepped forward, power rolling off him in waves. "My daughter bears the celestial bloodline. She has wings of moonfire, something that cannot be faked, glamored, or manufactured. She carries the royal command that forces submission from all wolves. These are not tricks or spells. These are genetic markers of the Moonlight bloodline. Markers that could be temporarily granted through powerful magic," Alpha Gregor countered. "For a price, any skilled witch could provide such abilities." "For how long?" Kieran spoke up from his position with the guards. "Temporary magic fades. She's had these abilities for weeks now with no degradation. How do you explain that?" "I don't have to explain it," Gregor said. "The burden of proof is on the Crown. You must prove she's legitimate. We only have to prove there's reasonable doubt." He was right. They were shifting the burden, making us prove something that should be self-evident. "The bracelet," I said suddenly. "My mother's bracelet responded to me. It was spelled to recognize only her bloodline." "A spell that could be broken and reset," Lady Mordine said dismissively. "Next." "The portrait." I was grasping now, desperate. "I look exactly like my mother." "Glamour magic. Really, Princess, this is becoming embarrassing." The way she said, "Princess," made it sound like an insult. I looked at the council members, seeing the calculations in their eyes. Some genuinely believed I might be a fraud. Others knew the truth but saw opportunity in supporting Cassius's coalition. Still others were simply afraid of what my return meant for their power, their positions, their carefully constructed post-disappearance alliances. "Vote," Lord Thuron demanded. "Let's end this farce." "There will be no vote tonight," my father said, and his voice carried the weight of centuries. "Because I invoke royal prerogative. As Supreme King, I have the right to recognize my own blood regardless of council approval. The coronation will proceed as scheduled." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Royal prerogative hadn't been used in over 100 years. It was considered archaic, almost tyrannical. "Your Majesty," Mordecai said carefully, "invoking prerogative will cause significant political backlash. Are you certain?" "I am certain of my daughter. If the council wishes to question my judgment, they may call for a vote of no confidence in my own rule." My father's eyes blazed gold. "But they will not question hers." The chamber fell silent. A vote of no confidence could trigger civil war. No one wanted that. Finally, Cassius stood. His face was pale but determined. "Then I invoke the ancient right of challenge," he said clearly. "If the council cannot stop this coronation, and if the king will not, then I claim the right to test her legitimacy through ritual combat. Let her prove her royal blood by defending her claim against a challenge from her own mate." Horror washed through me. "You can't." "I can." Cassius looked at me, and through the mate bond I felt his resolve and beneath it his mother's compulsion. She was controlling him, forcing this. "Ancient law is clear. Any wolf may challenge the legitimacy of an heir through ritual combat. If she's truly the celestial princess, she'll defeat me easily. If she's a fraud, the goddess will expose her." "She's barely trained," Kieran said, his voice sharp with fury. "You've had decades of combat experience. It's not a fair fight." "Life isn't fair," Cassius replied, echoing words I'd heard so many times in training. "Does the princess accept the challenge, or does she admit her deception?" All eyes turned to me. I looked at my father, who was pale with rage and fear. At Kieran, already calculating odds and strategies. At the council members, some smug and others sympathetic. At Alara, who was smiling like she'd already won. At Cassius, who looked like he wanted to die. "What do we do?" I asked my wolf. "We fight," she said simply. "We've been fighting our whole lives. This is just another battle." "He'll kill us." "Maybe," she acknowledged. "But we'll die as the princess we are, not as the fraud they claim. And that's worth something." I straightened my spine, channeling every ounce of confidence Kieran had been building in me. "I accept the challenge," I said, and my voice didn't shake. "Tomorrow at the coronation, let everyone see the truth." The council chamber erupted again, but I didn't hear it. I was watching Cassius, feeling through the bond his anguish and resignation. He didn't want to fight me, but his mother had left him no choice. Just like she'd left me no choice but to fight back. Tomorrow, one of us would die. And the kingdom would finally learn the truth, whatever that truth turned out to be. The crown waited on a velvet cushion, ancient gold worked with silver moonstone that seemed to pulse with its own light. I couldn't stop staring at it as the grand hall filled with the most powerful supernatural beings in the world. Alphas, elders, foreign dignitaries, all gathered to witness my coronation as crown princess and official heir to the Moonlight Throne. "Breathe," Kieran murmured from his position behind my seat. "You've earned this." Had I? 6 weeks ago, I'd been a servant cowering in Cassius's pack house. Now I wore ceremonial robes of silver and white, my hair woven with moonflower and diamond, preparing to accept a crown that would make my position irrevocable. My father sat beside me on his throne, resplendent in formal regalia. "You're certain you want to do this today?" he asked quietly. "We could postpone." "No," my voice was steadier than I felt. "Alara's been arrested. Cassius has testified against her. The conspiracy is exposed. There's no reason to wait." Except that every instinct I possessed was screaming danger. My wolf paced restlessly. "Something's wrong. The air tastes like blood and betrayal." "You're just nervous," I told her, but I didn't believe it either. The ceremony began with traditional invocations, prayers to the moon goddess, recitations of our bloodline's history, formal recognition from the assembled powers. My father rose and spoke of the lost princess returned, of prophecy fulfilled, of a new era beginning. And through it all, I felt eyes on me, judging, measuring. Some with hope, others with suspicion, and a few with open hostility. Not everyone wanted me here. Not everyone believed I was who my father claimed. The High Elder approached with the crown, her ancient hands steady despite her centuries. "Princess Maya Thornwood, do you accept the responsibilities and burdens of the Moonlight Throne? Do you swear to protect your people, uphold our laws, and rule with wisdom and mercy?" "I do." The words came out clear, ringing through the hall. She lifted the crown from its cushion, began to lower it toward my head. And Cassius lunged. He shifted mid-leap, his alpha wolf form massive and battle-scarred, jaws aimed for my throat. The crowd erupted in chaos, guards moving to intercept, but Cassius's voice cut through in the ancient tongue. "I invoke the right of challenge. Let no one interfere. This is between the princess and me." My father roared in fury. "You dare!" "By ancient law, a coronation can be challenged in combat," the High Elder said, her voice heavy with regret. "If he's declared it formally, we cannot interfere. The challenged must fight alone." "Maya has no combat training," my father protested. "She's barely been a wolf for 2 months." "Then she shouldn't be queen." Cassius circled me in wolf form, every line of his body promising violence. His voice echoed in the minds of every wolf present through pack speak. "She's an imposter, a fraud manipulating the king with stolen power. I'll prove it with her blood." Kieran's hand gripped my shoulder. "You don't have to accept. We can find another way." "No," I stood, letting my ceremonial robes fall away to reveal the fighting leathers I'd worn underneath, Kieran's idea, just in case. "If I don't fight, they'll always question my right to rule. They'll always wonder if I'm too weak for the crown." Finally, my wolf snarled. "Let me show them what we are." I walked down from the dais into the clear space that had formed in the center of the hall. Cassius stalked the perimeter, confident and deadly. He'd been training for combat since childhood. I'd had 6 weeks. This should have been suicide. "Last chance to yield," Cassius growled. "I'll make it quick." "You betrayed your testimony," I said coldly. "You swore you'd help us destroy your mother." "I lied." His lips pulled back from fangs. "Did you really think I'd choose you over her? She made me alpha. She gave me power. And once you're dead, she'll be released and everything will go back to the way it should be." So it had all been a performance. The tears, the confessions, the claims of being trapped, lies to make me lower my guard. Understanding settled like ice in my veins. He'd never been a victim. He'd always been complicit. "Then come," I said and shifted. The transformation was faster this time, smoother, and I felt the collective gasp as my celestial Lycan form emerged. Silver-white fur that gleamed like starlight, eyes blazing blue-hazel fire, and wings, magnificent wings of pure moonfire that extended from my shoulders and filled the hall with otherworldly light. I was easily twice Cassius's size, and power radiated from me in waves that made every wolf present feel the weight of true royalty. But size and power meant nothing without skill. Cassius struck like lightning, low and fast, going for my legs to bring me down. I dodged clumsily, and his fangs caught my hindquarter, tearing flesh. Blood splattered across marble floors. Pain exploded through me, but my wolf's rage was stronger. We spun and snapped, catching air as Cassius danced away. He was faster, more experienced, reading my movements before I made them. "Pathetic," he taunted. "All that power and you don't know how to use it. You're still the same helpless girl I locked in the basement." He lunged again, and this time I tried one of Kieran's defensive moves, using his momentum against him, rolling away and coming up behind. But I mistimed it, and Cassius twisted midair, raking claws down my side. More blood, more pain. The crowd was eerily silent, watching their princess get torn apart. "We need to fly," my wolf urged. "Use the wings he can't follow." I spread my wings and pushed off the ground, gaining altitude. Below, Cassius snarled in frustration. But then he did something I didn't expect. He grabbed a ceremonial spear from a nearby guard and hurled it with supernatural strength. The spear pierced my wing, and I crashed down hard. the impact driving the air from my lungs. The moonfire wing flickered and dimmed, damaged. "Not so divine now, are you?" Cassius was on me instantly, jaws closing around my throat. Not enough to kill yet, just enough to establish dominance to prove his point. "Everyone sees it now. You're no princess, just a broken girl playing dress-up." His fangs tightened, and I felt my life draining away drop by drop. In the crowd, I saw my father being physically restrained by guards. Ancient law forbade his interference, even to save my life. Kieran stood frozen, his face a mask of anguish, unable to help without violating the sacred rules. I was going to die, right here in front of everyone, proving Cassius right, proving I was too weak for the crown, too damaged to rule, too. No. My wolf's voice exploded through our shared consciousness with a force that shook me to my core. We are not dying in this man's jaws. We are not giving him this victory. We survived his cruelty for 6 years. We will not let him be the thing that destroys us. Power surged through me, not just wolf strength, but something deeper. Something that had always been there, waiting. My celestial bloodline awakening fully. I opened my jaws and roared. The sound that emerged wasn't animal. It was pure royal command, the voice of a bloodline 5 generations old, the authority of the Moonlight Throne given physical form. "Stop." The word reverberated through the hall with supernatural force. It crashed through every wolf present like a tsunami, irresistible and absolute. Cassius's jaws froze mid-bite, his entire body locking up as the command seized his nervous system. He couldn't disobey. No wolf could. Throughout the palace, throughout the city, throughout the entire kingdom, every single wolf dropped to their knees as the royal command washed over them. Guards, servants, alphas. Even my father bent under its weight, though he fought to stay upright. Only Kieran remained standing, human enough through his scarred, past that the command couldn't fully grip him. I felt the power flowing through me, felt how easy it would be to kill Cassius right now. To command his heart to stop, his lungs to cease, his life to end. The crowd expected it, some probably wanted it. But that would make me exactly what he'd accused me of being, a tyrant ruling through fear and force. I shifted back to human form, naked and bloody but alive. Cassius remained frozen in wolf form, paralyzed by my command. "Release," I said, and the word carried the same supernatural weight. The compulsion lifted, and wolves throughout the kingdom gasped as they regained control of their bodies. Cassius shifted back, collapsing to the floor. Terror replaced his earlier confidence as he stared up at me. "You challenged my right to the crown," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the silent hall. "You called me an imposter, a fraud, someone using stolen power to manipulate the king." I gestured to the assembled witnesses, some still on their knees, others slowly rising, all watching with expressions ranging from awe to fear. Every wolf in this kingdom just felt my royal command, a power that can't be faked, can't be stolen, can't be created by dark magic, a power carried only in the blood of the Moonlight Throne. I looked down at Cassius with something that might have been pity. "So tell me, am I still an imposter?" He couldn't speak, couldn't move, still trembling from the force of what he'd experienced. I didn't think so. I turned to the High Elder, very aware of my nakedness but refusing to show shame. "I've met the challenge and proven my legitimacy. May we proceed with the coronation?" The elder stared at me with something like religious fervor. "Princess Maya, what you just displayed, that level of royal command hasn't been seen in 5 generations. You are undeniably of the celestial bloodline, the most powerful we've seen in centuries." A servant rushed forward with a robe. I wrapped it around myself, wincing as fabric touched my wounds. Kieran materialized beside me with the medical supplies he always carried, his hands gentle as he began treating the worst of the bleeding. "You scared me," he murmured. "When his jaws were on your throat, I thought." "I know," I covered his hand with mine, "but I'm still here, still standing." My father had recovered from the command's effects and now approached Cassius, who still cowered on the floor. "You invoked the right of challenge and lost, By law, the victor claims your life, your title, and your pack. His voice was glacial. But the choice belongs to my daughter, Maya. Everyone waited to see what I would do. The traditional response was execution, swift, brutal, final. It would send a message about the cost of challenging royal authority. But I was so tired of violence, so tired of revenge. Strip his alpha title, I said. Declare him rogue. Let him live with the knowledge that he lost everything, not to my cruelty, but to his own. And when people ask why he's packless and powerless, let them know. He chose his mother's ambitions over his own redemption. Cassius looked up at me, and something in his expression crumbled. You're letting me live. I'm letting you survive. There's a difference. I turned away from him, addressing the crowd instead. I could rule through fear, could use my power to crush anyone who questions me, who challenges me, who doubts my right to the crown. But that's not the queen I want to be. That's not the ruler my mother would have been. I walked back to the dais, every step agony from my wounds, but I refused to show weakness. I choose mercy over vengeance, justice over retribution, strength tempered with compassion, and if that makes me seem weak to some of you, I met the eyes of those who'd doubted, who'd sneered, who'd whispered that I was unworthy. Then you don't understand what real strength is. The High Elder smiled and lifted the crown once more. Then let us proceed. Princess Maya Thornwood, do you accept? I do, I interrupted. All of it. The responsibility, the burden, the weight of the crown. I accept it because my people deserve a queen who understands suffering, who knows what it means to be powerless, who will never forget where she came from. The crown settled on my head, surprisingly light despite its significance. And the moment it touched my hair, power flared through me, the crown recognizing its rightful wearer, the bloodline acknowledging itself. Silver light cascaded through the hall, brighter than my wings had been, and every wolf present felt it, the undeniable truth of my legitimacy. I present Crown Princess Maya Thornwood, the elder announced, heir to the Moonlight Throne, bearer of the celestial bloodline, ruler-in-waiting of all supernatural territories. May her reign be long and her wisdom eternal. The hall erupted in cheers and applause. Not all of it was genuine. I could see the calculation in some faces, the resentment in others. But it didn't matter. I'd proven myself in the most public way possible. I was no longer the hidden princess, the disputed heir, the girl people could dismiss. I was the crown princess, and my power was undeniable. As the ceremony concluded and people began to approach to swear fealty, Kieran remained at my side. That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen, he said quietly. Maybe both. I swayed slightly, blood loss catching up with me. His arm was there immediately, supporting me. Healers, now. After, I murmured. Let them see me standing. Let them remember I held the crown even bleeding. So I stood there, wounded and weary but crowned, and received the oaths of wolves who would follow me. Some out of genuine loyalty, others from fear, still others from political necessity. But they all knelt. And for the first time since arriving at this palace, I felt like I finally belonged in this world. Not despite my scars, but because of them. Not in spite of my pain, but strengthened by it. The dungeons beneath the palace smelled of silver and despair. I descended the stone steps with Kieran at my side, each footfall echoing like a heartbeat in the oppressive silence. Guards bowed as we passed, their eyes avoiding mine. Whether from respect or fear of my royal command, I couldn't tell. Ilara's cell was at the deepest level, behind wards that made my teeth ache and my wolf snarl with discomfort. Through the reinforced bars, I saw her, the woman who'd stolen my childhood, bound my wolf, and fed off my power for 20 years. She looked like Death's shadow, without my stolen life force sustaining her. Age had caught up with brutal efficiency. Her skin hung loose and gray, her once sharp eyes were clouded, and her hands shook with constant tremors. But when those eyes found me, they still blazed with the same hatred I'd seen in my recovered memories. The little princess comes to visit, Ilara rasped, her voice like gravel scraping glass. Wearing your stolen crown, pretending you earned it. I earned it by surviving you, I said quietly. That alone makes me worthy. She laughed, a wet, ugly sound. You survived because I allowed it. I could have killed you 1,000 times over the years, could have drained you completely, left you a hollow husk. But I kept you alive, fed you just enough scraps to keep existing. You should thank me. Kieran's hand found my shoulder, grounding me before I could respond with anger. We're here for answers, he said coldly. The High Council convenes tomorrow to pass sentence. This is your last chance to tell the truth. Truth? Alara's smile was a death's head grin. You want truth? Fine, I'll give you truth, little princess, but you won't like it. I forced myself to breathe steadily. Why my mother? You wanted revenge on my father for rejecting you, but why kill her? Why not just take me? Because she was everything I wasn't. The words dripped with venom. Beautiful Lyanna, the chosen one, not destined by fate but selected by love. She made Valerius happy in ways I never could, gave him the partnership I could never provide. And everyone loved her. The court, the people, the gods themselves seemed to smile on that woman. Alara dragged herself closer to the bars, and I saw the madness gleaming in her deteriorating eyes. I watched her for months before I struck, watched her with you, saw how she loved you with every breath. And I realized, taking you would hurt Valerius, yes, but it would destroy her. She'd die trying to protect you, and Valerius would have to live knowing his rejection of me cost him everything he loved. You murdered my mother for spite, I whispered, horror and fury warring inside me. I murdered her for justice. Alara's voice rose to a shriek. She stole my destiny. The mate bond is sacred. You don't just break it because you found someone you like better. I was his fated mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself, and he threw me away like garbage. The mate bond doesn't justify cruelty, Kieran said. It doesn't give you ownership of another person. What would you know about it? Alara spat. You're just some rogue mutt the king took pity on. You don't understand destiny, obligation, the cosmic wrong of being rejected by the one person the universe made for you. I studied her through the bars, seeing not just a monster but a broken woman who'd let bitterness poison everything she touched. Did killing my mother make you feel better? Did 20 years of draining my power ease your pain? Something flickered across her face, not quite regret, but close. Nothing eased it. Every day I woke up knowing Valerius had chosen another. Every time I looked at my son and saw his weakness, I remembered that I should have had stronger children, royal children, with the man fate intended for me. She focused on me with unsettling intensity. So yes, I took you, bound your wolf with a spell I'd been perfecting for years. And I made sure you'd suffer exactly as I had, invisible, unwanted, convinced you were defective when you were anything but. The suppression spell, I said. The healers found something unusual about it, a secondary component that wasn't just binding my wolf. Alara's smile returned, grotesque and triumphant. Clever girl. Yes, there was a second spell, woven into the first, hidden so deep that even master healers wouldn't detect it unless they knew exactly what to look for. My stomach dropped. What did you do? I linked your suppression to your mother's death. Her voice carried perverse pride. The spell that bound your wolf was powered by the life force I stole when I killed Lyanna. Every day you lived in chains, every moment you suffered, you were being sustained by your own mother's murdered essence. The words hit like a physical blow. Kieran's grip on my shoulder tightened, the only thing keeping me upright. You made me live off my mother's death, I breathed. You turned her murder into the thing keeping me alive. Poetic, isn't it? Alara laughed that horrible laugh again. Lyanna died protecting you, and her death became your prison. The ultimate revenge, mother and daughter bound together in eternal suffering, and Valerius powerless to save either of you. Rage exploded through me, white-hot and absolute. My wolf surged forward, and I felt the royal command building in my throat. One word could stop Alara's heart, could end her miserable existence right now. Do it, Alara taunted. Kill me. Prove you're just as capable of cruelty as I am. Prove that power corrupts everyone eventually. My mouth opened. The command was right there, ready to be spoken. Maya, Kieran's voice, soft but steady. Don't let her win. Don't let her turn you into what she is. I looked at him, this scarred, honorable man who'd taught me that strength and kindness weren't mutually exclusive, who'd shown me that power revealed what was already there, and what was in me was still capable of choosing mercy. I swallowed the command and let my wolf settle. "No," I said quietly. "You don't get that satisfaction. You don't get to see me become a monster." "Then what?" Alara sneered. "Forgiveness. You think forgiving me makes you noble. It makes you weak." "It makes me free." I met her dying eyes steadily. "The High Council will sentence you to execution tomorrow. You'll die knowing your revenge accomplished nothing except creating the queen you wanted to destroy. But before that happens, I need you to understand something." I moved closer to the bars, and Alara instinctively recoiled from the power radiating off me. "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, not because what you did was forgivable, but because carrying your hatred alongside my own pain is a burden I refuse to bear anymore. You stole 20 years of my life. I won't give you the rest of it." "You can't forgive me," Alara whispered, and for the first time I heard fear in her voice. "You can't just let it go. That's not how this works." "Watch me." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Alara, my mother's love didn't die with her. It lived on in me in every moment I chose hope over despair, kindness over cruelty, endurance over surrender. You tried to corrupt her final gift, but all you did was prove that love is stronger than hate. Even dead, she won." I walked away from the cell, leaving Alara's anguished screams echoing behind me. Kieran stayed close, his presence a comfort I was only beginning to acknowledge I needed. "That was either the most merciful or most savage thing I've ever witnessed," he said once we'd climbed back to the main palace. "Maybe both." I stopped in a quiet corridor, suddenly exhausted. "Is it wrong that I don't feel better, that forgiving her doesn't erase what she did?" "Forgiveness isn't about erasing, it's about releasing." Kieran turned me gently to face him. "You can forgive and still feel the pain. You can choose mercy and still acknowledge the damage. They're not mutually exclusive." I looked up at this man who'd been my teacher, my guard, my anchor through every storm. "Thank you for everything, for training me, protecting me, seeing me as more than a victim." "Maya," he cupped my face with scarred hands. "I need to tell you something. Have needed to tell you for weeks, but the timing was never right and I didn't want to complicate things while you were finding yourself." My heart stuttered. "What?" "I'm falling in love with you." The words came out rough but honest. "Maybe I have been since that first day on the training grounds when you were terrified but showed up anyway. When you ran angry laps instead of apologizing. When you flew into the mountains and let me see your fear without hiding it." His thumb brushed my cheek. "You're the strongest person I've ever known, and I kissed him. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was 6 weeks of growing connection, of respect building into something deeper, of finally feeling safe enough to want. His arms came around me immediately, careful of my still healing wounds, but firm enough to ground me. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kieran rested his forehead against mine. "I should probably ask permission for that. You're crown princess now, and I'm just—" "You're the man I trust more than anyone else in this world," I interrupted. "The one who sees all of me and doesn't flinch, who pushes me to be better while accepting exactly who I am." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in days. "And if the crown princess wants to kiss her commander, I don't think anyone's going to argue." "Your father might have opinions." "My father likes you better than he likes most nobles." I took his hand, threading our fingers together. "But we're getting ahead of ourselves. I still have a mate bond to sever, a kingdom to learn how to rule, and approximately 1,000 political nightmares to navigate." "Then we handle them together." Kieran squeezed my hand. "If you'll have me." "I will, but Kieran—" I needed him to understand. "I'm not ready for another mate bond, not yet, maybe not for a long time. What Cassius and I had was poison, and I need time to—" "I know." He kissed my forehead gently. "I'm not asking for a bond. I'm asking for the chance to earn your heart the way real love should be earned, slowly, honestly, without destiny forcing the issue. No pressure, no obligation, just us choosing each other every day." The tears came before I could stop them. "How are you real?" "Barely." he admitted with a crooked smile. Most days I still can't believe the king took a chance on a broken rogue. But he did, and it changed everything. Now I want to be that for you, the person who sees your potential when you can't, who believes in you when you doubt, who stands beside you not because fate demands it, but because I choose it. We stood there in the quiet corridor, holding each other, and I felt something shift inside me. Not the false pull of a mate bond or the desperate need for validation. Just genuine affection, growing respect, and the possibility of real love built on truth instead of obligation. The High Council convenes tomorrow, I said eventually. Illyra's execution, then the formal mate bond severance ceremony with Cassius. Do you want me there? Yes, I need. I paused, realizing the truth. I need to know that when I cut that final tie to him, you'll be there to remind me that I'm not alone. That ending one wrong bond doesn't mean I'll never have a right one. I'll be there. He kissed me again, softer this time. Every step, Maya, you're not alone anymore. The High Council's judgment was swift and unanimous. Illyra was sentenced to execution for murder, kidnapping, dark magic, and crimes against the crown. She was to be beheaded at dawn in 3 days' time, her ashes scattered where nothing would grow, her name stricken from all official records. I attended the sentencing but didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. The mate bond severance ceremony happened the following evening in the same grand hall where I'd been crowned. Cassius arrived in chains, stripped of his alpha title, bearing the brand of a rogue on his shoulder. He looked diminished, broken, nothing like the powerful man who'd made me feel small for 6 years. The High Elder performed the ritual, ancient words, silver knife, blood from both our palms mixed and burned in sacred fire. I felt the bond's death as a physical severing, like a rope snapping under tension. The golden thread that had connected us dissolved into nothing, and suddenly I could breathe fully for the first time in 6 years. Cassius gasped as the bond broke, his hand flying to his chest. When he looked at me, I saw genuine grief in his eyes, not for me, but for the loss of the connection itself, the last tie to what he might have been. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For all of it, I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. I know you are. I looked at this man who'd been my tormentor and my mate and felt nothing. Not hatred, not pity, just vast indifference. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Cassius. I hope you become someone better than your mother made you, but I also hope I never see you again. He nodded and was led away by guards. I watched him go and felt only relief. Kieran was there immediately, his presence solid and warm. How do you feel? Free. I took his hand, not caring who saw. Finally, completely free. 6 months later, I stood in my private chambers preparing for the annual summit, the first I'd attend as crown princess rather than hidden servant. Vera helped me into a gown of silver and midnight blue, with the royal circlet that had become comfortable on my head. You look every inch a queen, she said with maternal pride. I'm still learning. I adjusted the circlet, catching my reflection. The woman staring back was confident, strong, with eyes that no longer apologized for existing. Some days I still can't believe this is real. Believe it. Kieran entered without knocking, a privilege I'd granted him months ago along with the title of First Commander and a suite adjacent to mine. The delegates are arriving. Your father wants you in the greeting hall in 10 minutes. Are you nervous? I asked, because we had an announcement to make tonight. Not a mate bond, we'd both agreed we weren't ready for that. But a formal courtship, publicly acknowledged, giving notice that the crown princess had chosen someone to walk beside her. Terrified, he admitted, crossing to me and pulling me into his arms. Your father's going to have opinions. The court's going to have opinions. Half the alphas will think I'm not good enough for you, and the other half will think I'm manipulating you for power. Let them think whatever they want. I kissed him, tasting home and safety and choice. I know the truth. You're not with me because I'm princess. You're with me because I'm Maya. And I'm with you because you see all of me and love me anyway. Especially the parts that run angry laps and argue with my training methods, he teased. Especially those parts. A knock at the door. Princess, the king is waiting. I took a deep breath, settled my crown, and took Kieran's offered arm. Together we walked to the greeting hall where my father waited, where nobles and alphas and dignitaries from around the world would see the lost princess who'd become their crown princess. I thought about Alara, executed and forgotten, about Cassius wandering as a rogue somewhere, about my mother whose love had sustained me even in death, about the girl I'd been invisible, cowering, convinced she was broken. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd chosen mercy over vengeance, who'd learned that power revealed rather than corrupted, who'd survived everything meant to destroy her and emerged stronger for it. As we entered the hall and the assembled crowd bowed, I felt my wolf's satisfaction and my own quiet pride. I'd come so far from that night when the king had knelt before me in a maid's uniform. "Ready," Kieran murmured. I looked at my father's proud smile, at the kingdom I'd sworn to protect, at the man I was choosing to build something real with, and felt absolutely certain. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's show them their queen." And for the first time in my life, I believed I was worthy of the title. Not because destiny said so, not because blood demanded it, but because I'd earned it, one painful, powerful choice at a time. I was Maya Thornwood, crown princess of the Moonlight Throne, celestial Lycan, survivor of cruelty and bearer of mercy. And I was only just beginning. Thank you for journeying through Maya's story with me. Don't forget to subscribe to join our community, and I will see you in my next story.